Start by grabbing one of these tiles from the Dollar Tree and paint it white or whatever color you want. Let's upcycle a food can. This had refried beans from a night when I made burritos for my family. And I'm also going to be using these white sunflowers as well as a pretty little yellow ditzy flower. Go ahead and measure the height of your can and cut your tile down to the height that you're going to need to wrap around the can. We're going to conceal that can texture with this beautiful tile, and it's going to make it look so high end when we're done, and you would never know that it was a food can. These could be so pretty in all different sizes, especially if you make different ones and put them and cluster them on a table together. Now this can is a little bit wider, so I had to get an extra little piece to glue to make the band come all the way around. Do remember that when you're working with hot glue on metal, the metal will heat up, so just be cautious as you're gluing on this tile. And once you've got that glued into place, you're going to go ahead and move on to our next step, which is bringing forth that texture. I know this is super popular with these tiles, but honestly, I love this process. I don't know if you're all sick of this yet, but I thought these tiles would be so beautiful on these cans and really elevate the look. So once you've dry brushed on that paint, now we're going to start working on the inside of the can. I added some foam. I'm tying on a ribbon and just tying a knot and creating a dovetail on the end, zhuzhing it up a little bit, and now we're going to start working on the inside of that can. I'm going to cut down the florals that I've picked. I thought a really pretty buttery yellow with a beautiful white sunflower would be such a pretty combo for the fall. I'm going to add in some of this Spanish moss, glue that into place, and then I'm going to go and start adding in all of my florals. I'm starting with the smaller floral first so I can fill up the bottom of that florals can, and then now I'm going to come in with the sunflowers. Now here's a tip with these sunflowers. When they come on the stem, their flowers are always facing straight up. That's not the natural position of a sunflower. They chase the sun all day long, so their necks are actually bent to the side, just like this. So I always like to bend them after I've cut them loose from the little bushel stem of the pick. And you can see this is the difference. Just making that twist to the side really elevates these and makes them look more natural. So I'm going to go ahead and just stick all of those down into place. And now for a little added farmhouse detail, I thought it would be so cute to take these little thread spindles and just glue them to the bottom like little feet. I get these from Hobby Lobby in a pack. I always get them when they're on sale. And just gluing that to the bottom really elevates the look of this, and the finished result is such a high-end store finish design. I hope you'll give this one a try. I don't know about you all, but I am still in love with these vintage tiles that you can get from the Dollar Tree. I'm going to spray paint it orange. I always use Rust-Oleum paint, and I believe this color was Real Orange. It's my favorite one. I'm pretty sure that's what this is. So I spray painted it and I let it dry. And the reason why I spray painted it first is just I find that it binds really well, and then I can change up the colors with the acrylicness of other paints. I did 3 dots, 1 higher, 2 lower, and as I come near those corners, I'm rounding the edges to create the shape of a candy corn. Now I wanted this to be large in size because I'm making it into a substantial showstopper decor piece, where we can put it in a wreath, we can put it in a pot of greenery. You can even stake these in your yard if you want to. I just think that these are so cute. Now I want to make sure I back it. When you cut the adhesive tile, the adhesive and the plastic parts separate. So I want to strengthen it by backing it with some of this chipboard cardboard I had on hand. And then I put a stick in between it. This is going to really strengthen it quite a bit. And if you're planning on putting it outside, I wouldn't necessarily put this chipboard cardboard outside, but if you have it underneath a covering like your porch, that will work too. So I went ahead and I put the stakes in them, and now I'm going to add on the white and the yellow to create a candy corn. I'm going to not just do one layer, I'm going to do 2 layers of paint for each color. That's why I spray painted it all orange first to knock that part out, and the acrylic is going to adhere nicely to the gloss spray paint that I put on this. So I'm just coming back on once the first layer was dry with the white and the yellow, and I'm adding on some more, and you can see I had a little mix up there where the white plopped right on top of the yellow, but it was no big deal. I just wiped it off. And then I decided to also paint the back because Heidi likes a finished backside. It's just what I do here in my craft room, but it's not necessary if you're trying to cut down on expenses with paint. Now I'm going to take a dry brush. That means where I'm not going to put a ton of paint on my brush, very lightly adding paint to the bristles of my brush, and then I'm going to lightly scrape the surface of the tile, and that brings forward that texture, that pattern on the tiles. It's so pretty. I love this project. It's so fun to make and so easy. Now I'm going to just dress up these stakes with some bows, some sprigs from greenery, some buttons. I can't help myself. I mean, I was just having so much fun at this point. And these are so easy to make. I've already said that like 3 times because you can just put them all over your house in different little things. Planters, you can even put them in your crock in the kitchen where you have all your utensils. What a cute way to dress up any kind of pot around your house or a wreath. Now I'm going to do my vintage ribbon trick. You've got to keep the heat gun moving because number 1, you don't want to burn your table, and number 2, you don't want the ribbon to catch on fire. But you want to warm it up enough with your heat gun that it causes it to shrivel up a little bit and it gives it that vintage ribbon look. Now the reason why I'm able to do it on my table is because these tiles you see on my table are actually floor linoleum tiles, and they are really tough to work with heat gun. I just stick them onto an IKEA table topper, and that's what you see you're looking at is just floor tiles. So I'm not crafting on my floor. I'm crafting on a table with these tiles on it, and it works great for videos. Anyway, I'm done dressing up one of the candy corns. I'm going to move over to the second one. I wanted to put in this little pumpkin pick that you can use for parties to put little cheeses in it or olives or whatever you want to do to decorate a party tray. And then some of these berry garland sprigs. I gathered those together, glued them on, and now I'm going to bring together all of those vintage ribbons we just made using the heat gun. And I'm going to just do a simple knot and tie them right onto the stake. And I wanted to dress it up just a little bit more because I can't help myself. I love this look where there are just lots of layers of ribbons. I added on a twine bow and then popped on a vintage button right in the center of that bow. Are you enjoying the video so far? I really hope so. Please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up. And if you are new here, don't forget to click that subscribe button and the notification bell. The Dollar Tree has beautiful signs right now at their store. This particular one has this very trendy fabric on it. I'm going to be using this sign as well as this other sign. We're going to use this as the base. Some florals. And I'm also going to be using some foam and popsicle sticks, as well as a little bit of moss. To start, go ahead and cut off that beaded garland, and we're going to use that later on for another project. Pop off the little hanging piece inside of the long rectangle sign, and then grab your dull scissors, 2 popsicle sticks, or craft sticks, whichever you want to call them, cut those in half and glue those into your box. We're going to change up how you can use this decor wall piece to be a stand-up decor piece. versus just only having the option to hang it up. I'm adding in glue onto those sticks, making sure there's a lot on it, but not too much that's going to spill out onto the sides and cause a big sticky mess. I'm gluing it centered on the circle, and then I'm going to clean up any of those little glue string strands that come out. Now I'm going to take my hot glue. I'm putting it inside the rectangle box so I can add in my cut down pieces of foam. Once those were in place, I went ahead and chopped up all of my floral picks and leaves. They're perfect for the fall season. They have a lot of really beautiful things that you can pick from their floral section. And I will say, yes, the price went up on these, but friends, they're still really affordable compared to other stores, and everybody else's stores are also all going up in prices. I still find them very affordable to work with. Unless you were to go to Hobby Lobby and you buy big picks where they're on sale 40, 50% off, then you get an even better deal for a bigger pick. I'm adding in that moss to cover up that foam. We don't want to see that part. Using lots of hot glue down in there. And then I'm going to come in and keep filling it all in until it's as full as I want it to be. Now you're going to notice on the sign where the beaded garland used to be, I used some half wood rounds to cover those holes. And then I'm going to use 6 of them on the bottom of that little rectangle sign to create feet, and it really elevates the high-end look of this project. This DIY is very whimsical and easy to recreate for any level of crafter. I'm going to take some of these leftover painter handles after cutting them down from a bunch of other projects, but you could also use some of these large tongue depressor sticks that you can see over to the side here that I'm going to be using for the hat. You could use those too. And I'm going to take my Crop-A-Dile and I'm going to punch out 2 holes on these painter stick handles that I have cut down from, like I said, previous projects. I want to make sure I'm using every single thing in my craft room and trying to maximize my supplies. And now once I've got those 2 holes on the sides and not the one in the middle, I'm going to go ahead and measure out the brim of the hat with these large tongue depressor sticks. I get mine from Walmart. I love these jumbo sticks. I use them all the time because they're really great to work with to get a wood look, and you can cut them with your scissors. So I went ahead and glued 2 of them together to make a thicker brimmed hat, glued it at an angle, and now I'm going to just dry brush on some brown paint for the face of my cute little scarecrow little decor piece. And then the top is going to be a rusty orange. And then I didn't show this part very well. I'm so sorry, but I just took some raffia and I cut it down to size and made it look like the scarecrow had a little bit of hat hair coming out on the sides. So you can just see that I kind of glued it on the back side and I gave it a little cut. Not too long, but you know, just cute enough to pop out. And now I'm going to add on the face a little smile, 2 eyes with the back of my brush. And then I'm going to use the same orange color that I used on the hat. And I'm going to just do a little triangle nose. And then at this point, it could stop here, but I feel like it still needed a little bit something extra. So I'm going to go ahead and take one of these Dollar Tree sunflowers, and I'm going to glue that off to the side. I thought this was a cute little touch to add. And once I had that glued down in place, I went ahead and added the twine to the very top where we punched out those holes originally. Tied those on so I can hang it up on a doorknob or a hook on, you know, the wall somewhere. And now I'm going to, again, just add a little bit more. I'm going to add a bow, and the finishing touch, I felt like it needed a button right in the middle of the bow. So I added a green button, and I love how it turned out. I just think it's so whimsical. We're going to take these simple galvanized buckets, pots, they're in the floral section at the Dollar Tree, and we're going to turn them into something really special for the fall season. It's amazing how you can take the most random thing from the Dollar Tree and turn it into something really unique. Something you would see in a boutique where they would charge way too much money. Now I went ahead and covered up that twine with some painter's tape because we're going to take these outside and I'm going to spray paint them this Real Orange by Rust-Oleum. This is my favorite spray paint, and as well as these other two to use for the fall season. I get asked a lot about what colors I use, and this is one I use quite a bit. It's a perfect orange color. Once the spray paint was dry, I removed that painter's tape to reveal the twine, and then I'm going to come in with a little bit of distressing. I'm using brown paint and cinnamon, and that gives it a really nice rusty look. You go as heavy as you would like, or skip this part completely if you are not a farmhouse rustic lover. I'm just simply tapping my cinnamon onto that wet paint, and it has a very nice rusty look when it's done. I'm now going to pull from my fabrics that are more neutral. I've got this really pretty cream fabric with a ticking stripe tan and cream fabric. I'm now getting all my fabric from Hobby Lobby, and they had some really great deals when I went on this day, so I picked up a whole bunch of neutral ticking stripe type fabrics. I'm going to cut two of these pieces down, one a little bit smaller than the other, so I can stack these on top of each other. Once I had it to the desired size that I liked and they fit nicely with each other, I made sure to fray the edges just a little bit, not too much. Again, you do whatever you feel is right for your projects and for your home. But I'm just going to pull some of these fibers to loosen it up, and then I'm going to take some brown paint left over from the distressing of the pots, and I'm going to just lightly rub along the edges, giving it a little bit of a distressed look. Once it looks the way you want it to with your distressing, I moved on to some stamps that I had on hand. I pulled out the word pumpkin, and then I stamped that right onto the tan cloth, the cream cloth, whatever you want to call it. I like to clean my stamps as I go because then it just makes it easier later on for cleaning up, putting things away nicely. And then I also stamped the word patch, so pumpkin patch, on this piece of cloth fabric. Now I'm going to glue down that taking stripe onto the pot. And I'm just going to line that up right in the middle. I love how this project turned out. I love all the different texture. When I think of fall decor, I think of projects like this. They're so whimsical. They're super warm and inviting. Add a little bit of pop of color, and it has that farmhouse flair. Glue that ticking stripe down onto the pot. Come on to the cream fabric, adding some more glue. And I kind of twisted it a little bit. I wanted it to be a little tilted so you can see that ticking stripe underneath it peeking through. And once that was all glued into place, I then went on to the top of my bucket. Funny enough, this stick is from my yard. We were doing a whole bunch of start of fall cleanup in my garden, and I had this huge branch that I pulled off of a tree. And I now have just been cutting it up and using it here in my craft room. I love things like that that contribute to crafts. So if you have a backyard and you have a bunch of sticks, definitely go outside and find some of those. It's a great affordable way to make a cute pumpkin. I glued that down, added some moss, and then I wanted to tie a bow on the other one. I decided not to put any fabric on the actual pot itself. So I'm taking this pretty satin ribbon. I lightly spritz it first, just to activate the fabric. And as it starts to dry with the heat gun, it pulls in those fibers, allowing it to shrivel up and have a very vintage ribbon look. On the other gingham ribbon that I get from the Dollar Tree, I'm just not even having to wet it. There's enough polyester in it that it's pulling tight. And I just go over it with the heat gun to cause it to shrivel up, and it saves me tons of money instead of buying really expensive vintage ribbon. I tied the first bow onto the twig that is on the top of the pot, And then the second one, I tied it and then glued that onto that beautiful Merlot burgundy deep satin ribbon. Now I had this gold leaf button on hand. I have been saving this thing forever. It is perfect for this project. I'm adding some glue. I'm going to add that right onto the pot that says pumpkin patch. And then on the back, I'm going to clean it up with putting some of the moss to hide all the glue. I found this frame in the home section at the Dollar Tree. We're going to pop it apart and spray paint it. I thought the shape on this was so beautiful and I wanted to turn it into a pumpkin. So I took it outside. I used my real orange spray paint by Rust-Oleum, and I'm going to now put that to the side after it had dried. Obviously, I brought it back in, and I'm going to cut apart the plastic piece. I just took my scissors, I went down a straight line, cut around that little clip, and then came back up, because we're going to be using that to put a whole bunch of patterned scrapbook paper on it. This is the easiest craft. We're going to just take 2-inch strips and 1-inch strips, and we're going to just layer them and pattern them however you would like. This is such a fun project that any age and any craft level can completely try it and be very successful with it. Now we're going to take some adhesive. You can see that I roughed up my paper edge. I thought that would look very scrapbook chic and cute. And then I'm going to come back in with my scissors and the overhang from that plastic sheet that was inside the frame. I'm just going to trim it down. Once I've got it trimmed down on one side and the other side, I'm going to also put scrapbook pattern paper on the back of it because I wanted it to be able to be versatile. You can turn it either way and both sides are really cute. So once I've got that all trimmed up, I'm going to go ahead and use the rest of that pattern paper and do the exact same process, adding on the adhesive and then cutting it down to size. Now once I'm all done with that and I've trimmed it all down, I'm going to go ahead and pop it back into the frame. And here's the cute thing. You really could put a darling picture on the pattern paper and that could be really cute too, and actually use it back as a frame. But I wanted to use mine, like I said, for a pumpkin. There's lots of possibilities with this as a pumpkin. You can use it as a frame or you can use it as a frame table decor. Alright, now once I've got that all popped back together and it snaps back really easily, now we can leave it like this or we can add a little bit more, which is my favorite step. I'm going to make this have a crackle finish to it. I really love the Folk Art Crackle Paint Mixed Media liquid. And I know some people say you can use Elmer's glue. I have not tried that, but I really love the finished look that this Crackle Paint Mixed Media liquid does on projects. So once I put a nice thick coat on it, I let it dry, and then I'm going to come in with a peachy orange color. I love that the crackle underneath was the darker orange and then the lighter orange on top. I just thought that this was so beautiful. Once I've got a nice thick coat on, and you want to work quick, by the way, with this stuff because it starts working almost immediately. You really can't drag your paintbrush through it a whole bunch of times because it will start to pull the paint. So I went ahead, painted all around it, and once it was dry, I really wanted the shape of the frame to pop out more. So I'm going to come in and dry brush all along the edge so we can see that beveled, beautiful edge on the frame. I'm just going to come back over, add in a little bit of a rustic farmhouse flair to it, and bringing forward that edging. Now for the top. You honestly could use anything for the stem of this pumpkin, but I decided it would be really cute to try rope. So I'm just cutting out 4 pieces of the same length of rope, I'm going to add some glue on top of 2 of them smushed together, and then center that 3rd rope right in the middle of those 2. Let that dry for a second, flip it over to the other side, and then glue that 4th one into that other side, so it makes this really cool stem to my pumpkin frame. And then I'm going to trim it down, and I want it to lay flat on the frame. I don't want it to fall off over time, so I decided to rip just a little bit up that rope so that I can lay it flat down onto the top of that bevel edge of the frame. And you can see here how it's laying nice and flat, and it's almost just the perfect fit for it. So I'm going to just add some hot glue, glue that right down, and it's actually going to get into the crevice of the frame's crack where you can seam it back together and take it apart, change out the middle part. Now I'm going to add on a green bow. I thought the green was such a really fun contrasting color, and it went along with all the fall colors, bright and happy. And now I'm going to add a button. There I am with my buttons. I can't help myself. I have a whole collection of buttons and all different colors. I am so in love with buttons. I just think they're the cutest, most whimsical thing to add to a project. So I'm going to add that button right in the middle, and at this point I'm going to stop there, and it's ready to be displayed in my home. This is going to be a 2-for-1 project. I love finding random things and turning them into something really cool. I took this placemat, this lace placemat outside, spray painted it with my Rust-Oleum Real Orange paint. Once it was dry, I'm cutting it in half. I'm going to put one over to the side. We're going to work with that in a minute. But first, let's work on our hang-up tapestry. I took that piece of the lace placemat, I'm gluing it onto a backer, which is just this neutral drop cloth fabric. I'm going to use my sanding block that I get from the Dollar Tree and just rough up the edges so it has that beautiful fall farmhouse look to it. Then I'm going to take another piece of the drop cloth. I believe this is a 5x7 in size. I'm going to glue that right down onto there. And then now I'm going to make a darling pumpkin. I'm just kind of freehanding it. You can see I went over it first with a pencil, and I'm making the lines darker so you all can see it. But it's basically a more squished oval for the pumpkin with 2 little bumps in the center points at the top and the bottom. And then I'm going to create a long linear oval for the middle part of the pumpkin. You kind of get what a pumpkin shape looks like. I'm sure if you've been crafting for a while, you'll know what the shape looks like. But basically, I just freehanded this real quick. I'm going to cut it all out. And the reason why I'm adding on the oval part onto this pumpkin fabric, it adds a lot of depth and texture. Now, I wanted to do a little distressing. I'm going to use my chestnut brown stamp that I often bring out when I don't want to get out my paint. I just kind of tapped around the fabric, and then I'm roughing it up again with the sanding block, and I'm going to glue that right down into the center. And you can see that this adds so much depth, adding on this extra oval into the middle of the pumpkin. Super cute, super easy to do. I'm going to glue that down into place, and I decided at this point, because I'm bringing in so many layers of fabric, I got out my brayer so I can make sure that the glue was drying flat and it didn't look bumpy underneath on the fabric. I took a piece of tan burlap fabric, created a little stem for my pumpkin, and then I'm just going to glue that all down into place and roll it out with my brayer. Now to move on to the leaves, I'm going to be using the citrus polka dot green and white fabric. I'm creating the shape of my leaves. It's kind of more of a chunkier leaf. It's not long and linear. It's more rounded. I distressed it with my ink pad again. I put a dot of glue right in the middle of the leaf, pinched it in half, and then on one of the sides, you can see here, I'm going to pull one of the sides down, and that creates the leaf to have a lot of texture and it pops up. I used to do this technique all the time in scrapbooking with paper. It's one of my favorite ways to make leaves. Because you can see when I go to glue them down, they raise up a little bit and it adds a lot of fun texture. I'm going to go ahead, glue those in place. I'm doing 2 leaves on one side of the pumpkin. You can put as many leaves as you want. You can even use some beaded garland to create a vine on it. That could be really pretty. Once I had those glued in place, I'm now going to move on to a stencil. This part's optional. You don't have to do it, but I really thought it would be cool to add on some type of a wordage texture on this tapestry I'm making. And I just found a random stencil, but I'll link the one that I have here down below. I bought it from Amazon in a stencil kit. They had a whole bunch of different options, and I'm always constantly loving using these stencils because there's so many fun things to stencil with on my projects. I went ahead and just tapped it on. Remember, you don't want to have a lot of paint on your brush. Keep a dry brush and keep adding on layers of paint, thin layers of paint. That's how you get your stencils to not bleed. Once I removed it and it was dry, I'm going to add a bow to the top of that pumpkin because I think that is just so cute. I love a good bow. And then, speaking of beaded garland, because I mentioned it earlier, I decided to create the handle for my little hang-up tapestry with the beaded garland. So I'm going to just double it up, twisting it into each other, cut off the extra you don't need, and then the best way to do this is you coil the ends into a little circle, glue that onto the back, and I like a nice finished backside so it looks like it came from the store. I added some more glue on top of it, took some more of that drop cloth, pushed that red on top of it, and look at how nice and clean that looks, like it came from a store. Now on the other side, I'm going to distress it just a tiny bit more. You can skip this part if that's not your thing. And in the end, it's such a pretty project. But before I show it, we're going to go on to the next other half of this placemat. I started with cutting off the scalloped edging. It had a clean, definitive line in there. I wanted to get to that, so I'm cutting off this extra scalloped part on both of the pieces. This is about a 5x7 piece that we're going to be turning into the coolest, not a tapestry, but a hang-up bag that you can put whatever you want in it. Now I wanted to line the placemat because I didn't want to see through it, whatever we put inside of our little bag. I put some of that drop cloth fabric on the back of it. I used my brayer. And then after those were both lined, I put glue around the sides and the bottom, but left the top open so we can put things in it. Go ahead and smush those together, smooth out that hot glue in there. And now I'm going to do some distressing to really bring forth that beautiful orange. I love it when it goes from an ombre effect of a lighter orange into a burnt orange. So pretty for the fall. It reminds me of the leaves whenever I go out for my walk to get exercise for the day. Now I'm going to be using one of these wood cutouts from the Dollar Tree. You're going to see that burlap leaf there. Just ignore that. I almost used it but didn't end up because I liked how the wood leaf worked better. I just spritzed it with water, and I'm going to use some paint that was already on my brush from distressing the bag, and I'm going to do a little bit of a staining on this wooden leaf. Now I'm going to add in some rope into the bag, into the corners. I'm going to push it down in there with a little pencil I had next to me because it will burn me if I don't do it that way. And now I'm taking that wooden leaf and I'm just tying it onto the handle of the bag. This is the easiest project. It looks like there's a lot of steps, but it really goes so fast. Once I had tied the bow, I'm going to add on a cute button because I like buttons and bows here. I'm going to glue that into place, and while the glue was still hot, I thought it would be really pretty to add a little bit of a shimmer right underneath and around the button where the glue is. And it's just the tiniest detail, but it's really pretty. It's not too much glitter. I'm using my old school Martha Stewart vintage glitter. Do you remember that glitter that she had in those big kits? Did anyone else have that and buy that? It was one of my favorite things that she sold in her crafting line. And then I'm going to add in one more tiny button right into the center of the larger button. I love layered buttons. I think they're so cute when you do it like that. And now I'm going to use 2 of these picks, smushed all together. I'm going to sink that down the bag. I'm not going to glue it so I can switch it out whenever I want to. And that completes that look. Look at how cute these 2 pieces are just from using a single placemat. It is so fun what you can make with scraps of fabric, turning it into something special for your home. This sign is super popular at the Dollar Tree and they bring it back every single year. It's in the woodcraft section. I love the idea still of having signs in my home. I know that they were trendy and then not trendy, but I'm going to say I think they're still fun and trendy. I am going to be using the sign, some of the tumbling blocks from the stacking block game that they have in the kids section at the Dollar Tree, and then 2 of these half wood rounds, because when I take off that twine, I'm going to have those holes there and I'm not going to want to see that. I am going to take those tumbling blocks and I'm going to glue them all together. And there is one step I'm going to point out in just a second where I'm going to help stabilize it when it stands upright. How I forgot to put that part on these 2 little extra legs. And I want everyone to know I am not burning my fingers. First of all, my fingers are very calloused from using hot glue gun for years. But my hot glue gun, I also don't let it get super hot where it can be dangerous. So I have a medium temperatured hot glue gun that doesn't allow me to get burned, but I do not recommend rubbing your finger across hot glue. It's just how I craft. If you've been crafting for a long time, you probably do it too. For new crafters, let it cool for a couple of seconds, and then once it's cool to the touch, then you can wipe away anything that spills out, or you can use a scraper blade, which I have sitting over there to the left that's green and orange. I love using that because it helps me get up any glue I don't want on there. Now at this point I'm going to start to paint it, but you can see the additional stacking blocks that I added right here. You can see those 2 that are supporting the back of it so it stands upright and beautiful and it doesn't have any problems falling over. I am taking some black paint and I'm going to paint everything where the wood is brown. I'm going to paint it all black. Now here's a tip. When you get to the letters, do not use a paintbrush. It wants to keep going off the edge of the letters. It's better to use your finger, and you're just going to roll the paint on and just take your time. This part's very therapeutic. I love using my hands with paint. It always makes me feel super calm. I always find my breathing slows down and I'm really focusing on what I'm doing. So once I've gotten all the letters painted and I've gotten the sides and the back, everything painted, and everything is dry, we're going to move on to the distressing part of it. And friends, you can paint your sign whatever color you want. I could see this being very beautiful as a red, if you want to go with brown, because that's a very trending color this season. Isn't that so funny how some seasons, some colors are more popular than others, and right now it's brown. I always think it's so funny. But I do actually love the trends. I find them fun. Once everything was painted and dried, I'm now going to come in with my sanding block from the Dollar Tree, and I'm just going to rough up the edges to give it a farmhouse look, because I still love farmhouse. Just because that's not trending so much anymore doesn't mean we have to give it up. I'm going to just sand it lightly all over the edges, and then it's ready for my home. For this project, we're going to be using 3 different fabrics a long wood plank from the Dollar Tree, some beads from the Dollar Tree, some wire, and paint and stamps. I'll show all the supplies as I go. We're going to start with these fabrics. We're going to be making candy corn, and it's going to be so adorable for this fall season. I particularly do not like candy corn, but my oldest son loves it. It's his favorite fall treat. I don't understand why, but he does. Leave a comment down below to let me know if you like candy corn like he does. Now you can see here I drew out some candy corn shapes using my Sharpie marker, and then I went on the inside of the line with my hot glue so that when I fold over the fabric and braid those fabrics together, I now can cut out along the line where the Sharpie marker was, and those are welded together nicely. And the reason why I did this was just to thicken up the fabric a little bit. Now I'm going to move on to the mustard yellow and pumpkin orange. I took a strip of the pumpkin orange and I glued that onto the mustard yellow. I did a little snip and I ripped it apart. This is going to allow it to have a nice frayed edge and give it that farmhouse look. Then I'm going to put some hot glue on the cream part, sneak that underneath those two pieces of fabric that are brought together in the pattern of the candy corn. Make sure everything's all nice and glued together, and then once they are, I'm going to go ahead and cut them all out. I really like using a brayer whenever I'm working with hot glue because I feel like it distributes the hot glue a lot better than just pushing and tapping it down. Sometimes it doesn't flatten out well. That's why I'm using a brayer. Now for one of them, I am going to cut the mustard yellow a little bit shorter just so that they're a little bit different from each other. I like when they have that whimsical opposites of each other where they don't look so formulated. They all look exactly the same. I want them to have some kookiness, some whimsicalness to them. So I'm just kind of changing it up a little bit for each one. Now I'm going to just flip it over and cut out the orange and the mustard yellow with the shape of the cream candy corn. Once they're all cut out, I'm going to use my chestnut brown ink pad and I'm just going to lightly tap around it, doing some distressing wherever I want. Now for that wood plank from the Dollar Tree that I get in the craft section, I'm using some water, a little bit of black paint, and a lot of brown paint. I make this solution all the time. It is a perfect stain and it doesn't stick to your hands, so you can wash your hands when you're done versus using a oil-based stain, which is so hard to get off of your skin. I am just going over this very quickly and it's absorbing into the wood nicely. And you can definitely play with the paint colors as much as you want with that stain. You just keep playing with it until you get the color that you desire. Now I'm gluing on my candy corn and I'm going to take some twine. I also get the twine from the Dollar Tree. It's in their craft section. I'm going to wrap it around that middle candy corn a couple of times, and you can see that I only used 3 of the candy corns. I saved that 4th one for a project on another day because I decided, instead of only putting candy corn on the sign, I decided I wanted to put some text, some words on it. Now I'm taking a piece of wire, I'm going to twist that into place and add on these white beads. And you can add on whatever beads you want, or just only do wire, or do a beaded garland, whatever you choose to put at the top. You can even put ribbon if you desire. And I'm just going to thread these all onto the wire and then tighten the wire in place, twisting it nice and tight. I always like coming in with my needle nose pliers, my wire snips, and I like to always tighten everything so that there's nothing that can scratch anybody. And I'm just going to twist around, making sure it's nice and secure. Now once that is all in place, I'm going to move on to the stamping part. And this part's optional. You could just put all of the candy corns. But I decided I really like the idea of giving it a very farmhouse candy store flair. So I'm going to stamp on candy corn with these stamps that I have on hand. And then these particular stamps I'm using right here for the word treat. These are from the Dollar Tree in their craft section. I'm going to just stamp these letters. And remember, when you're using stamps, always check the opposite side because sometimes you have to reverse the word when you're stamping. So you would put down candy corn thinking it's going one direction, but it actually will be backwards when you flip it over. So always do like a pre-stamp just to make sure you've got it in order for the word you're going to be stamping. Once that was done and dry, I came back in with a little bit more distressing, and I was just using my water faux stain that I'm putting around the edges. And then I decided to put a price tag on the candy corn, so you can get 25 cents of candy corn, a little bag. And I'm just using a brush, taking my time, going around it. And I really wanted this to look more mercantile rough, where it's not, you know, stamped with a cleaner look. And I've decided to make mine 25 cents. You can make it whatever you want. Once everything was painted on, I made sure I came back in with my heat gun because I'm going to do a little bit of sanding to distress the text and the font, just to give it more of a farmhouse look. So I'm just using the heat gun to really make sure everything's dry before I sand with my sanding block, just to rough it up a little bit. And in the end, this sign is so cute, and I'm so excited to style it in my home for this fall season. This project is so much fun. I found these brand new pumpkin stakes at the Dollar Tree, and they had them in 3 colors, and I immediately knew I wanted to make them into a beautiful, beautiful decor piece. So grab 3 of those colors, a foam square, one of these black metal baskets, some fabric, which I'm using drop cloth, and some ribbon. We're going to start by cutting down a piece of that drop cloth to fit down inside there. You want it to look all farmhouse and kind of rugged, so don't worry about the sizing being so perfect. And then we're going to take that foam piece, and I'm going to just poke some holes using the white pumpkin down into there, because it's going to be a little too difficult trying to glue it in there to make things stay without making a mess on the bottom. I want to have a clean finished look. So I'm going to take 2 zip ties, and we're going to sneak that zip tie down into one of the holes. And just a second earlier, I was showing myself snipping little holes at the bottom of that fabric. That's so we can slip the zip tie in through that hole, come through the basket, and we're going to come back up around the other side through the fabric, through the foam piece, and then zip tie it on the inside of the basket. This is going to make it look so clean, so polished, without hot glue being everywhere at the bottom of this and making it look too messy. I like this approach so much more. It does take a little bit of finagling to get that in there, but it's definitely worth the results if you do it this way. So I just keep moving around the fabric so I make sure that the sides are all pulled up. Once I've got that all in place, I go ahead and zip tie it down into the basket, and because of the little metal caging, the zip tie sits nicely down there without causing any issues of the basket not being able to sit flat on the ground. So once I've got that zip tied down, I'm now going to come in with the hot glue, and I'm going to go along the inner rim of that basket, and I'm just going to tap the fabric up against it so it really cleans up that fabric, and now it has that fall farmhouse look. I'm going to conceal that foam with some Spanish moss, and now we're going to move on to our metal staked pumpkins. This part is so much fun, and I will say if you have any arthritis, you're going to need to have someone cut this part for you because it is a little tricky to cut these metal pieces. They are a little bit thicker than the normal one, which is okay, but like I said, if you have any arthritis issues, just get someone that's willing to help you cut this part. You can see here that I've lined up my pumpkins, and I'm cutting the stakes down on these so that they're all the same length, because we're going to take these 3 pumpkins and zip tie them together. I'm coming around where the stem is, and I wanted my pumpkins to be kind of tilting to the side a little bit to give them some whimsical fall character to them. And I'm going to just zip tie that part of that leaf to the white stake on the pumpkin, And now I'm going to zip tie part of the vine off of the orange pumpkin onto the yellow and white stakes. And you can see here that I'm just shifting them around, and then at the very end I'm going to come down to the bottom and zip tie all three of those together. This is going to really lock them into place. They're nice and sturdy at this point, and we're going to go ahead and stake that into our foam piece. Now this part's really important because you want to have a nice sturdy finished piece. Make sure you push that all the way down in there, and then use lots of hot glue and conceal it with that Spanish moss that's in the basket. I made sure to go up around the rods on the pumpkins, and I'm just now going to straighten it out to make sure it's sitting the way I like it to before it all dries. At this point, it's so stinking cute, and it has such a Kirkland's high-end look to it. We also are going to conceal those zip ties with some brown paint. It's going to make them completely disappear once you add that brown paint to them. And we're going to be able to decorate these pumpkins however you want. You can put some flowers in it. You can leave it as just the Spanish moss. It's up to you. I've decided to come in with some grass. Now, I will tell you, friends, I added on these two bows, and afterwards you're going to see that the green bow is missing because I just felt like it was overwhelming it too much. While I loved the green bow and I thought it was so pretty, I decided to simplify it and only keeping that beautiful fall check ribbon on there versus having the big green bow. Now I'm coming in with a whole bunch of florals, a couple of buttons to really make the finished look all come together, and when it's done, it has the most high-end look, and it only cost us a couple of dollars from the Dollar Tree. Grab one of these tag signs. Dollar Tree has so many of these tag signs, so just grab whatever season they have them in store. And we're going to grab one of these wood wreaths. It's kind of almost in the shape of an oval. They have these in their floral section, and two of these tumbling blocks. Start by taking off that tag and cutting some fabric to fit the size of the tag wood sign. I do not like having an unfinished backside, so I'm just cutting this fabric with a real quick snip around, and I'm just going to glue that on so it cleans up the backside and it looks so much more finished like this. Then I'm going to flip it over and I'm going to give it a nice coat of a beautiful pumpkin orange. I did 2 coats because orange is an opaque color. It usually takes about 2 coats for that to be nice and vibrant the way I wanted it to look. Once it was all dry, this part might scare a lot of people, but it's going to be so beautiful in the end. So if the dry brushing is not your thing, you don't have to do it. But I'm just going to take some of this off-white paint, make sure I only have a little bit, and I'm going to dry brush around the sides. Now I know this looks a little scary, but look at the results when it's done. It's added so much texture, and it reminds me of the Cinderella pumpkins that you can get at the fall time. Now I'm going to take some hot glue. I'm going to take that wreath that we have from the Dollar Tree. I'm going to glue it down with a whole bunch of glue. And I'm also going to add in those little 2 tumbling blocks. This is going to represent the stem at the top of a pumpkin. At this point, you can decorate it however you would like. I'm going to come in with some of these creamy, peachy, almost tan-like leaves that they have at the Dollar Tree. I'm going to play around with those leaves in just a little bit further in this video. But now I'm going to glue down my grateful wood cutout, glue that on, and then add on a few more of these leaves and a couple of these berries that were from all the same pick. Now at this point we can leave it like this, but I don't like that the top has that little drilled out hole. So I'm going to make a twine thick bow. And I've had a lot of you ask me to slow down to show how I make this. I start with a long end to my twine, and then with my 4 fingers spread it out, I wrap it around my hand probably about 10, maybe 12, 13 times until it's nice and thick. I have another long end at the other end. I take one of those ends, wrap it around the middle a whole bunch of times, and then I tie a couple of knots. This is going to give you this really beautiful loopy twine bow. I leave those tails long at the bottom because I just like how it looks. You could add some more of that twine down at the bottom for longer tails, but I usually like just the 2 twine pieces coming down. And then I just fluff up the bow really big. And at this point, it's just so pretty and so perfect for fall. Not too understated, but not too overdressed. And now I'm going to just add some hot glue and pop that right into place to conceal that hole at the top. And you've got yourself a beautiful farmhouse fall sign. Here I am with the random tray that I have been holding on to since the summertime. I loved the shape of this and I knew I could turn it into a beautiful wall decor piece. I took it outside and spray painted it black, and then I'm going to come in with a flat cream acrylic paint, just whatever flat paint. You can use chalk paint too. I'm going to go over it a few times to make sure it's nice and solid. I did about 3 times, I believe, maybe 4, I can't remember, but I just kept letting it dry in between other projects I was making. Once everything was painted and the lines were all as clean as I can get them, we're basically making a sign look like an enamel farmhouse sign, but we are going to be saving tons of money because this is just a $1.25 tray that I picked up in the summertime. And they have these trays all year round. So go ahead and clean up all those lines, and once it was dry, now we can put a really beautiful inspirational quote on it. You could also do like florals on this, whatever you want, a family picture. The options are endless, but I wanted you to see how you can take these trays and turn them into something cool. Now the quote that I decided to put on this tray was, "Pray before you overthink." Friends, for the last 4 years, I have been diligently working on getting my anxiety under control, and I will testify, praying before I overthink really helps connect myself to our Father in heaven, really helps me clear my thoughts and not overthink. So I highly want to recommend that one as a tip here on my channel. Always pray before you overthink, because God has some really good answers that He can help inspire us and bring us peace. Now I wanted to give it that enamel rustic farmhouse look, so I'm adding a little bit of brown paint here and there around the rims of the tray. I'm doing the brown paint and then the cinnamon trick. This is the coolest technique when you use cinnamon because it just smells so good in your craft room. I love using this rustic technique. Once that was dry, I flipped it over, added some glue dots and a twine so I can hang it up, and in the end, you have a beautiful inspirational sign to hang up in your home. I almost passed up this tray, but I had Calvin with me on this day and he said, "Hey, what about this? This is round and this is orange." We were looking for particular items for this video, and I said, you know what? That would make the cutest pumpkin. So I picked it up thanks to his recommendation and his keen eye for catching, and I almost missed it. Definitely take a friend with you when you thrift shop, because sometimes you can find some cool things through the perspective of someone else. So I'm just going to take this cut down painter stick and I'm going to put some hot glue, wood glue, and then 2 staples on it so that I can make a handle on it. Now I thought that this would be cute, the 2 different tones of these woods, and now I'm sketching on with my pencil, "Hello Fall." I thought that that would be a really cute thing to put on and turn this into a pumpkin sign. What a fun way to be able to give it a new look by leaving the wood, and the orange color is actually perfect for this video's theme and the color I'm doing in my home for the fall season. Orange is actually my favorite color because it just is so happy and bright, and I really do just love color so much. So now I'm taking my time and I'm just hand painting on where I sketched out those letters. And once that was done and dry, I'm going to go ahead and take a whole bunch of ribbon, all different kinds and colors, going with the theme that I'm doing for these colors. And I'm going to just tie some of them, glue on some of them, pinch some of them, so they have all different layers to it. And then in the very center, I'm going to just add a simple star button because I love adding buttons to ribbons. I know it's a problem that I have, but I love buttons so much. I actually collect them. And now I'm going to just add a couple more ribbons to the back to make sure it's nice and full and chunky, because the more ribbons, the better. I really just love how it finishes that look and makes it just look more luxurious with all that ribbon on there. And then the last to hang it up, I'm just going to take one more ribbon and glue it towards the top so I can hang it up on a wreath hook. And that completes this look for just a couple of bucks. This project starts to evolve as we're working on it, but the starting supplies are going to be the 3 foam balls, 2 craft sticks, 3 of these little serving cups that you find in the kitchen section, and some moss. Now I'm going to take these outside and spray paint them white, but in the end they end up black and they don't end up being white after all. I'm also using a foam square, and you'll see how I use that in a second. Now here they are where they start out white, because I was thinking I was going to go a lighter look with some distressing, and it just didn't end up being that way. That's kind of how I do projects here, but you guys know that if you've been watching my channel for a while. I really like to play with my things and let them evolve and get their own personality. Now these are my wire snips that I use. I love these things, they're so helpful. I'm taking the stick, I cut it in half, I pierce it into the foam, and then add some hot glue and add the stick into the foam. Now at this point, the easiest way to cover the ball in moss is to take the moss, flatten it out on your table, put glue all over, and you can see I'm not just squeezing the glue on with the hot glue gun, I'm actually rolling it and smoothing it out onto the actual surface of the ball, because the more glue surface covered onto that foam is going to allow the moss to really adhere to it, not having bald spots that you'll be able to see with the white coming through the moss. So you can see how I'm laying it here on this table on top of this bed of moss that I made, and I'm just going to keep packing it on while the glue is drying. It's going to lock it all in, and it's going to prevent me from having to sit here forever trying to cover up every tiny little spot. Once I had half of it covered, I moved over to the other spot, flattened that moss out again, put more glue, and rolled it in it again. This is the easiest, quickest way to put moss on a foam ball, and it looks so nice when you're done. Go ahead and pull away any extra that you don't want, cut it with a pair of scissors, give a little haircut. And now we're going to move on to those cups again. We're basically making mini topiaries that you would see at a really cool garden center or at a really cool shopping center. I think these are so cute when they're done. Just wait until you see all 3 of them together styled. They are so cute and so fun and quick to make. So I ended up painting them black because you could see I was trying all kinds of different things, and I was like, you know what? The black is going to look really great for the fall and in the summertime, or I don't know, year round, just because they have a neutral farmhouse look to them. But I'm really excited to style these in my home for the fall. So I poked a hole into that foam that I glued down into the little pot. You can see how it's tipping a little bit because it's top heavy from the foam ball and the moss. I'm going to fix that in just a second. But to cover up the inside of the pot, I'm adding in some Spanish moss into this pot. And here's how I keep it from tipping over. I have these little wood rounds that I get from Hobby Lobby. I'm just going to glue this at the bottom, and it completely corrects them having to feel like they're going to tip over, so I don't have to constantly pick them up, because there's nothing more frustrating than having a decor piece that you have to keep restyling. I have cats. They hop up on shelves sometimes, and they would just knock these over and they'd be constantly rolling off. but adding the base to it allows them to have a nice flat surface to hold onto. I'm going to cover that up with black. Can you see what I was saying, how this project is going to evolve? But those are honestly the best ones when you just keep playing with it and you create something new for your home that just is so pretty. Now I could leave them like that, but I can't help myself. You know me, I love a bow and a button. So I'm adding on this ticking stripe bow, the ribbon I get from the Dollar Tree, and this teensy tiny little button that's brown right in the center of the bow. And it just has such a beautiful boutique look, so high-end looking. I know typically topiaries at boutique stores are crazy expensive, so we're going to make this just for a few bucks using Dollar Tree supplies, and that completes the look. Aren't they so pretty? As a reminder, as we are nearing the end of this video, don't forget to head over to the channel gallery. There are so many new videos here on my channel that you missed this week. Every single week, I am posting tons of brand new projects, 10 to 17 brand new projects. So don't forget to go to the channel gallery and check out all of those videos. I think a well-decorated home has cute little dilly bobs all over it. It's not always about having big, substantial pieces. So what we're going to do, we're going to take these clothespins and a whole bunch of fabric, and we are going to stain them into a darker color. It's really simple. I'm just using some water, a little bit of black paint, a lot of brown paint, and I'm going to create a nice stain, a chestnut stain, or I wouldn't even say mahogany. I would go with like a chestnut stain, but you could make it mahogany if you put a little touch of red in there if you wanted it. I'm going to just paint all of these. It absorbs into the wood beautifully. And once they were dried, I moved on to my fabric. Now I'm going to just create a whole bunch of these strips where they're about 2 inches or 1.5 inches. And then this part's super simple. I'm just going to put a little dot of glue and then wrap those fabric strips around the clothespins. This is such an easy project, but it's so substantial on a shelf, on a table, in a bowl, sitting on your coffee table. They just are so cute, and it's a great way to bring in color that you're doing for your home for the fall season. I like to stick always with traditional fall colors because that's just my thing. But you just wrap it all around nice and tight, and then you can decide how you're going to pin it off. So you can use a straight pin from sewing, you can use little clothespins, you can use twine, or you can just glue it. You can also use ribbon if you have a whole bunch of ribbon. This is a really fun thing to do as well. And then to give it that distressed look, I'm going to add some twine. I'm going to use my chestnut ink stamp. I like to use that sometimes instead of putting water or paint on fabric. I'll just use my stamp. You're going to see me do it in just a second after I tie this knot. And it gives it a nice distressed look without it being too distressed. But again, you go as distressed as you want. I love when the fibers are coming loose on these fabric pieces, which is the reason why I rip it. I do a snip and I rip. And it just turns out so cute. Now I'm going to go and style these in a bowl, and it is just going to look so pretty on a shelf. The Dollar Tree has beautiful signs right now at their store. This particular one has this very trendy fabric on it. I'm going to be using this sign as well as this other sign. We're going to use this as the base. Some florals. And I'm also going to be using some foam and popsicle sticks, as well as a little bit of moss. To start, go ahead and cut off that beaded garland, and we're going to use that later on for another project. Pop off the little hanging piece inside of the long rectangle sign, and then grab your dull scissors, 2 popsicle sticks or craft sticks, whichever you want to call them, cut those in half and glue those into your box. We're going to change up how you can use this decor wall piece to be a stand-up decor piece versus just only having the option to hang it up. I'm adding in glue onto those sticks, making sure there's a lot on it, but not too much that's going to spill out onto the sides and cause a big sticky mess. I'm gluing it centered on the circle, and then I'm going to clean up any of those little glue string strands that come out. Now I'm going to take my hot glue. I'm putting it inside the rectangle box so I can add in my cut down pieces of foam. Once those were in place, I went ahead and chopped up all of my floral picks and leaves. They're perfect for the fall season. They have a lot of really beautiful things that you can pick from their floral section. And I will say, yes, the price went up on these, but friends, they're still really affordable compared to other stores, and everybody else's stores are also all going up in prices. I still find them very affordable to work with. Unless you were to go to Hobby Lobby and you buy big picks where they're on sale 40, 50% off, then you get an even better deal for a bigger pick. I'm adding in that moss to cover up that foam. We don't want to see that part. Using lots of hot glue down in there. And then I'm going to come in and keep filling it all in until it's as full as I want it to be. Now you're going to notice on the sign where the beaded garland used to be, I used some half wood rounds to cover those holes, and then I'm going to use 6 of them on the bottom of that little rectangle sign to create feet, and it really elevates the high-end look of this project. Our supplies are going to be 2 of these garden hang baskets. They had these out around springtime, and I bought a whole bunch of them knowing that this could be turned into a pumpkin. I was so excited to figure this out because I haven't really seen anybody do this. In fact, I don't think I've ever seen anybody use these to turn this into a pumpkin. It is the easiest DIY ever. You're going to just take off the wire chains, and then you're going to line up the lines on the baskets, and then with some zip ties from the Dollar Tree, you're just going to zip tie every single joint where the bars line up. Then you're going to take your scissors and you are going to snip off the rest of the zip tie, and make sure you take the part that has that little square on the end where it fastens all together, twist that inward so you don't see it sticking out. Once you've got that done, go ahead and take a jar lid that they have at the Dollar Tree, and I'm going to just use some E6000 so that this stays together nice and tight, because this is going to become the top of our little pumpkin, so we can go ahead and add a stem to it and decorate it however you would like, honestly. Then you're going to take some hot glue on the inside and just glue that in place. Now this tool, I'm going to be showing it a little bit later on. I've showed it here before on my channel. It's called a Crop-A-Dile. It's used for scrapbooking and fastening on eyelets. I love this tool, but you can see that I used it because it's able to punch through metal like nothing. I mean, it is like using a hole puncher going through paper. So I went ahead and punched 2 holes so I could take some more zip ties and then fasten that to the top without having to worry about it coming off later. Then I took it outside and spray painted a really pretty fun orange color. You could do this whatever color you want for your pumpkin. And then I'm going to scrape off a little bit of the paint at the top because I want to make sure that it bonds well to the actual metal versus the paint. Over time that can peel away and break off really easy. So then I'm going to take one of these little wood stumps that they sell at the Dollar Tree in their floral section, glue that on, and then I'm going to take some of this greenery and staple it to the backside of that little log. And I did that because I didn't want to worry about these falling off over time, and stapling it on there is going to hold everything together nice and tight. I added some more hot glue, and then I'm coming in with this bead garland that you all know that I love here. I think it's so cute when it's coiled and it makes it look like a pumpkin vine, all curly and cute. Then once all that was in place, I added a bow, and you are ready to decorate your home. This sign is super trendy right now, and I know a lot of you are trying to get your hands on it. If it hasn't been in your store yet, just make sure you just keep checking back. They're coming to all the stores because this is a $1.25 sign. I'm also going to take one of these other wood signs from years past. They bring them back every year. This cute darling wood pumpkin decor piece, and then we are going to just remove the bow, we're going to remove the twine, and we're going to come in with, well, I'm going to use this. You can paint it whatever color you honestly want. I'm going to go with a really beautiful creamy orange color. I'm going to paint it all over the front and back because Heidi likes a good backside being finished. I like things to look store-bought here on my channel. I don't like things to look, you know, rough on the backside. I just think finish, you know, the job and make it look pretty on both sides. Now, when it comes to working with scrapbook paper, I know that there are a lot of different ways to do it, but this is how I do it. So you can cut it, or you can take your finger and just trace and press along the side. That's going to give you the initial outline. And because I like a farmhouse look, I'm going to come back in with some sandpaper once I glue it down and sand off the extra edges that I don't want. If you want it to be more precise, you could always crease it down very, very nicely, as I did for the first step of this, and then, you know, just come in with your scissors and cut right along that line. But I like my edges to be rough because I like that farmhouse distress look. Not too heavy on the rustic side, but lightly. So you can see that I got all three pieces covered with scrapbook paper. And now I'm going to come up at the top, and I thought it would be really pretty to add this texture of the twine on the stem of the pumpkin. And we're going to just wrap around until you have the whole thing covered. Up at the top is the trickiest part. That's why I'm showing you here. I put glue and I just take my time getting the glue to adhere. And once you go around a couple times, it builds it up so it'll stay in place, and then you just glue down the last bit of it. Now on the back, we're going to bring these two together to really elevate that beautiful pumpkin pie sign with the pumpkin. I just thought these two were begging to be together, and it really elevates the look of this sign that is just so pretty. So you can see here that I'm reinforcing my twine with some popsicle stick, and I made a handle, and the backside looks so clean and finished. And I just think, you know, take the extra time to just paint the backside, make it look nice, maybe cover with fabric. That's just me. I like to show everyone here on my channel that it is possible to have a nice backside to your projects. And then to finish, we're going to add on a couple of beautiful bows and a little button. This is my favorite sign. The Dollar Tree came out this fall season, and I wanted to turn it into something really special since it's such a large sign. I thought it would be so fun to turn it into an advent calendar with pockets. So I cut this dowel down to size, and I put some glue on some fabric, and I'm going to show the measurements for this in just a moment. But I'm getting a very large piece of felt and a piece of drop cloth, and I wanted to have these two different tones layered, and you can see here that I'm gluing them all together. You could sew this. I definitely recommend it if you like to sew, but I know a lot of you on here are not seamstress and you don't sew, So if you do, make sure you get a brayer roller, and this is going to allow you to be able to smooth out that hot glue. Now I wanted some scallops on the side of my advent calendar, so I'm just using a large jumbo size tongue depressor stick that I get from like Walmart. I traced some scallops and then cut them out with some small fussy cutting scissors. This is honestly the best to be able to get into these tight spaces using a small pair of scissors. And I just like how the scallop looked. You don't have to do the scallop, but I personally loved it. Now I'm going to glue on this sign, and you can see that I am using quite a bit of glue, and I want to make sure that I'm using quite a bit of the fabric at the top to really glue on there so that the weight of the things in the pockets are not going to separate the fabric from the sign over time. And now I'm going to just use that brayer again. I'm going to roll all over it. I'll make sure I link that down below. Now here's the measurement for the fabric. For the yellow, I used a thick felt, and then the tan is actually a drop cloth. Now I'm figuring out the sizing I need for my pockets to fit across the width and the length of this advent calendar. I went ahead and just put down my measurements again. Now I'm moving on to cutting my pockets, and you can see here for my cotton fabric that has this pattern on it. A lot of people use this for quilting. I'm going to go ahead and fold it over and double it up. So if I'm doubling up the fabric, I'm going to use a 9 by 4.5 inch. If not, if it's just a solo piece of fabric, I'm using the 4.5 by 4.5. I thought I would also share my rotating cutting mat. It's a self-healing cutting mat, and you can use it for sewing or crafting. I love this thing. It is my new favorite. So I'm going to link that down below, as well as the brayer tool. Now that my pockets are all cut out and I've decided what I want each pattern to be in what place, I'm going to go ahead and start working on my pockets. Now for the really thin fabric, like this really thin green fabric, I'm taking some of that drop cloth and just lining the inside of it with some of the drop cloth, just a 4.5 by 4.5 square. And then now I'm going to go ahead and glue that down. I put something right in the place of where the insert of the pocket would be, just so that I can create a little bit of an opening, and it's not going to have it where it's a perfect square laying on the actual drop cloth. So once I've got all of those glued down, because you want to be able to put your hand inside there without struggling, I then moved on to the tags. The tags are just little garden stakes that you can get in the floral section at the Dollar Tree. And I went ahead and popped off those sticks from the back, and I'm just hand painting on all of the numbers 1 through 16. I went and I looked at the calendar, and I wanted each pocket to represent a Saturday throughout all of the fall season. So every Saturday we can do something fun, like go pick out pumpkins, or we can, work on picking out our costumes, and each little pocket will have some type of a treat that will be also inside of it for my kids. I love advent calendars. I cannot say enough about them because I just feel like it gets everyone so excited for the season, no matter what it is, for Christmas, for fall, for spring. I'm a big fan of them. So now I'm coming in with a bunch of my buttons. I collect buttons. I love buttons. I have always loved buttons. So I'm going to go ahead and just glue a whole bunch of those all over, and the hot glue does a great trick. I'm also at the top where the hole originally was for the twine of this sign. I'm going to add on some of these half wood beads because I just thought it made it look more farmhouse, and it really cleaned up the top. And to finish off the project, I flipped it over, I put down some twine, and then to reinforce the twine, I'm taking a jumbo popsicle stick, and I'm just going to put some glue. I cut it down to size and put that right on top to help reinforce it and make it stronger. What would fall be without a gorgeous wreath for our doors in our home? So I picked up this wicker white wreath at the Dollar Tree. They restocked their white sunflowers. I made sure to grab some of those. And now I'm coming in with a whole bunch of color with wheat sticks and leaves. I really wanted to just showcase those beautiful colors that we see in the fall time, some of these beautiful peonies, berries, and then this very last pick is actually from Hobby Lobby. I'll show it a little bit later in this segment for this project. Now go ahead and take your darkest leaf first, glue those down, and then start to come in with the leaves. This is going to fill up that wreath form, and then as we start to come in with the berries, you're going to want to stick around the sides of the wreath, making sure you're filling it out even more. I'm now going to come in with these beautiful grass wheat sticks, and I'm going to just stick those right down in there. Do you see how I'm sticking all along the sides to add that texture and the volume to this wreath? I just keep playing with it, staking them in, gluing them in place, and then when I get that all to the place I like, I now can come in with my florals. I'm going to start placing all of my white sunflowers in the spots that I have a little bit more of balding areas. I'm going to glue those in because those are a very large item. They're going to do a lot of coverage for those spots, but I like to sporadically place those kind of evenly around the wreath. And then I'm now going to come in with these beautiful just sunset pink, orange, peachy colors of this peony, and I'm going to just stake those into the wreath in different areas. Now this is that pick I've grabbed from Hobby Lobby, and I'm just going to cut a couple of these because I wanted to bring in a little bit more white to make sure that the white sunflowers don't look stark on it. Anytime you use an off color from something that's really bright and colorful, you want to come back in with another version of that stark color, which is the white sunflower, and then add a little bit more texture in with a different type of floral, but the same color. And that's how you get a beautiful finished look. Head to the Dollar Tree and pick up 4 of these beaded wreath rings. These are so fabulous to work with. Start by taking the wreath and open up that clamped wire ending. On the first 2, we're going to remove 2 beads, and on the other 2, we're going to remove 3 beads. The reason why we're doing this is because if you try to bring these together in the shape or the form as a pumpkin, the beads are going to collide into each other and it's not going to sit very well. Once you've got those beads off, 2 on 2 of them and 3 on the other 2, go ahead and clamp them back closed again because we're going to bring them together into the form or the shape of a beaded pumpkin. Now these pumpkins at beautiful home decor stores, they are so expensive, it's ridiculous. I picked up each one of these wreath ring beaded forms from the Dollar Tree for $1.25 each, and with 4 of them we are going to get the exact same look and save so much money. Now we're going to take those 4 wreath rings and we are going to open up the beads at the top and the bottom so it's got that spacing in there so the wires can come together but not the beads colliding. Once you've got that all nice and situated in there and the beads aren't competing for the space, take 2 zip ties and zip tie them tightly into the placing that you want. Set it aside. At this point, I grabbed a log twig from outside on a tree we're about to cut down because it's just old and it's having some problems. I drilled 2 holes, one at the bottom and one through so that I can zip tie it onto the form, and I also can hot glue it in there so that everything holds together. And now I'm going to take one of these wood rounds from the Dollar Tree. I'm taking off the twine around the side. I took off the tag, and now I'm going to add some hot glue. Take that wood round, we're going to take it and flip it upside down with that hot glue on, and we're going to press down until it dries. You can put something in there to make the weight of it press down even harder, and then you're going to flip it over, taking more hot glue and going in between all those crevices. And I'm going to use some of these larger jumbo clips from the Dollar Tree craft section to hold it in place while it dries and set it to the side. I'm going to now go back to that log that we cut from earlier with the holes we drilled. And you don't have to drill the holes, but I really like when my projects have a high-end finished look. It looks like it came from a store, that nothing is going to break off of it if somebody picks it up. So the zip tie is going to really lock it into place, because if you just hot glue it, in my opinion, I think it's going to come off. But if you're gentle with it and you don't have any little hands picking it up, it would be fine if you did hot glue. To complete the look, add some moss to disguise that zip tie and a candle for display. Now, I could not believe I found this teapot. I've been looking for something like this forever. And so I started by just simply taking off the tape, got off any sticky residue. This packaging tape actually did a number on it, so I had to use some Goo Gone to get it off. But once I took everything off and made sure the surface was clean, I took it outside and spray painted this beautiful orange color. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my pencil and I'm going to just sketch on a cute little face that I think will be so happy and friendly for my home for this fall season. Now I'm going to come in with my paintbrush. I'm using an angled paintbrush, and I'm going to just take my time painting on this face because there's no rush. I really do love painting. It feels so therapeutic for me to use my hands and to take my time painting. So I'm just going around the corners. And I will say, because this angle is right on certain lines of the smile, that part was a little tricky. I kept going over my pencil line and I kept having to trim it up where I made little mistakes, but I had so much fun painting this on. And once it was all dry, I styled it in my kitchen for a darling look. For this DIY, I'm going to be taking 2 of these baskets that I picked up from the Dollar Tree. They have these pretty much year round. I'm going to take also some of these clips. I'm going to just show this whole thing as I'm going through. I'm slowing down the steps so that you can see everything. I'm going to cut down the middle of the basket, and then I'm going to come down to the bottom and cut around the bottom of the square of the basket. At this point, you can see I cut out the bottom part of the basket. Now I'm going to go and divide the 2 baskets. After I've cut the 2 pieces apart, I'm now going to add on some glue at the side of those cuttings where we split the basket in half, and then I'm going to clamp the 2 sides together, and then I'm going to use the clips to hold them all together so it doesn't come undone. Once that's dry, I'm going to come around to the bottom of the basket, add some glue, and clamp that down. Now, I got this idea because I was at a home decor cute boutique store. I saw that they had these baskets there, and I thought, wait a second, that looks like something that I bought from the Dollar Tree. So I wanted to try to take a chance and see if I could make it work in my own craft room for a fraction of the cost. The smallest basket, they wanted $15, and the bigger basket, they wanted like $23, I think. No way, I thought. I could totally make that by just manipulating the basket and taking my time and going slow. This is real speed time. You're seeing exactly how long it's taking me to cut it apart. Now for the longer basket, you can see that I brought on a second piece, the other half of that basket. I'm going to glue around that rim for the top of where the basket used to be before we cut it apart so we can weld those pieces together. And the trick is you want to try to just squish it and tighten it almost like a belt around the sides so it looks like it's all one piece. I'm coming in with tons of glue, but not too much that it's going to leak out everywhere and make a big mess and you're going to see glue everywhere. I'm going to just keep squishing it all together and then holding it all in place. Now you can see you can't really put a clip there, so I was just kind of hanging out holding this until it dried, but that was okay. I had music playing in my craft room, And once it was dry and it all looked nice and complete and good, I then went ahead and moved onto the bottom of the basket and did the same thing like I did for the other little basket, where I added glue to the bottom, and then I used my clips to clamp it all into place to make sure that everything is nice and glued and locked in. Now these baskets are just so pretty, and I think that you could put so many cute things in it. I think they would be beautiful hanging up on hooks in a kitchen on the wall. You can hang it up on a very small skinny wall and a small powder room bathroom. There's so many pretty things you can do with these baskets. Now I'm going to show in a second how I did these handles on the longer basket, but first I'm sharing that I wanted to just add a little tag to the front. The one that I saw inspiration at the store actually had a tag on it, and I thought it would be pretty to add one of these garden tags from the Dollar Tree. Now the bottom square from the basket, when you pull it apart, it gives you the perfect size to create little handles for the basket. So I'm just going to take one of these wood strips and I'm going to just tuck it in and around, creating that little loop. And I'm going to add some hot glue in there so that it can hold that handle in place. And then at this point you can put in whatever you would like. Now I'm not going to put any foam in because I want to be able to change out this basket all year long. I have a really pretty hook in my kitchen, and I thought this would be so pretty seasonally to switch out the florals in it. This DIY is so much fun. It can be a little advanced, but I'm going to try to slow all the steps down to show you everything. I'm going to start with this scrap piece of fabric that I have here, and I'm only going to glue about 3 inches up on each side, and then I'm going to gather in the bottom, add in some hot glue, take some yarn, wrap it around, and tie a knot. I'm going to then repeat the same thing on the other side because we're bundling up the ends. Think of almost like a lumbar pillow. That's kind of what we're doing at this point, but we're going to end up filling it and stuffing it and turning it into the most darling stand-up pumpkin decor that is so whimsical and just happy. When I look at it, I just get so happy. So now what I'm going to do, now that I flipped it inside out, I'm going to go ahead and bring up the sides just a little bit more on the bottom part, because I'm going to go ahead and open it up and I'm going to drop in some of these glass beads. This is what's going to help it stand up and be able to be sturdy at the bottom. So you can see here that that's where the bundle is that I gathered together, and then I put in all of those glass beads, and now I'm moving on to starting to stuff it. We want to make sure that it's stuffed really well, but not too full that you can't do the next step. Enough to be able to shift around the batting that's on the inside. Then I start to lessen the opening by gluing the sides up a little bit more, stuff in the last of that stuffing, and then I start to kind of roll it and play with it, and you can see there that I still have it not fully sealed yet. I'm going to go ahead and do the bottom part of my pumpkin snowman body, and I'm going to twist it really tight and then tie a knot. Then once I've got that knot in place, I went ahead and closed the last of the hole, making sure that I had enough batting in there. That's why I wanted to keep it open until I got the bottom part done on the pumpkin. And I'm going to go ahead and find where his middle of his body is going to be and his head. So again, I'm going to just keep playing with it until I find a nice middle spot for me to squeeze and tie on that yarn nice and tight. And you can see at this point I've got my 3 different sections. At this point you're going to massage it to make sure everything looks nice and round or lumpy, whichever you want. You could make a really lumpy pumpkin. And then what I do here is I actually add some hot glue all around inside that yarn where I tied it, and I'm going to compress the fabric down. So at this point it's going to squish the pumpkin, and this is where he's really going to take life and start to look like a little pumpkin. You can see right here as I'm holding it together and letting the hot glue dry, it looks like the 3 sections of a snowman pumpkin. Then at this point we could start embellishing it. I put a branch up at the top. I added on some buttons for his tummy. And then because it's a little pumpkin snowman, I'm going to go ahead and use some black felt and my tiny, tiny little scissors to go ahead and cut out a smile and a triangle for his nose, and I'm going to glue that on into place, making sure they're nice and secure. And then I'm going to move on to adding on a scarf. I'm going to go with this black and white buffalo check, and I always like to manipulate where my scarf is going because I want to be able to see the buttons. I don't want it to be flapping in a weird place. This is also a really great time to be able to cover up anything that maybe you don't want to see, like some hot glue that where the seam is. I'm going to just pull that over and just play with it until I get it to where I want it to be. Then I'm going to add on some button eyes. And at this point, he is just such a cute little snowman pumpkin. And I'm going to come into the arm area, cut a tiny little hole, and then wiggle in some sticks. The best way to do this is just a tiny hole, work in that stick, and then add some hot glue to let the glue wrap around the arm and pleat around the fabric so it really holds it into place. Then I thought I would embellish it just a little bit more. You could stop there or go a little further, which is what I love to do here on my channel. I decided to add on a little green heart on the side, because this particular inspiration with the green heart was something that I had seen on Pinterest that someone had made a long time ago. I thought that would be so cute to add that onto this little pumpkin. And then up at the top, I'm going to add on the same fabric for the heart, but I'm making a little leaf up at the top and I'm going to glue it up there, as well as I'm going to bring in another leaf that I had left over from a pick because I saw it sitting there and I thought, you know what, I'm going to use that too. And I like the contrast between the two different green tones. So I just cut off one of the leaves and just pinched it into place. And then right at the joint of those leaves that come onto the branch, the top of the pumpkin, the stem, I'm going to go ahead and add on some star buttons because I just love these star buttons. And then the last is to just pick off any hot glue and he's ready to be displayed. I love using food cans because it is the easiest trash to treasure flip. I think that they are so affordable and you can do so many cool things with them to help organize things around your house and to make something beautiful on a budget. Now I took my 3 cans outside, spray painted them white, and now I'm going to cover them with different sizes of this fabric that I found that matches my color theme for today. One of the cans is going to have a nice thick piece of fabric from the top to the bottom, leaving the white rim poking out. And then the other one is going to have a much smaller band of fabric around it, leaving more white exposed. And then the tallest one, we're going to jazz it up a little bit by putting on this white star button and some twine as well. I simply took it and just wrapped it around and glued it into place. Nothing too crazy here. And then for the little star, I just added some twine into the holes of the button and glued it into place. Now at this point, this extra special jar is going to get a floral arrangement in it using those really beautiful frosted leaves from the Dollar Tree. And at this point, it is so fun because you can put whatever you want inside of them. I had all of these random pieces sitting on my craft table and I thought I'm going to bring them all together, these little scraps, and make them into something so darling. I have this wood plank, this little metal handle I get from Amazon, I'll link it in my description box, some leftover fall florals, and I'm going to stain this wood plank. I want to give it a vintage rustic look to it, where something that when you think of apothecary, you think of all kinds of florals, especially going into the fall season. I thought this would look so pretty if we stained it a nice dark color. And then I'm going to come on with some white paint. I did about 2 layers 3 layers, I can't remember, but I wanted to make sure the white was nice and strong on it. And I did do a little bit sanding. I forgot to show that part, but not too much, just enough just to like make the edges look kind of faded so it looks old and vintage. I marked my holes for my handle, got out my Crop-A-Dile, punched my 2 holes, and then to put the handle on, you could just glue it in place, but I really like to make things that are sustainable here in my craft room. So I'm going to add on some of these tiny little brads that I had on hand, and then I'm going to just pop those into the holes, flip it over, and then open up the brad legs and glue them in place. This is going to really lock it in so that it doesn't have any issues with it coming loose or falling off over time. Now once that was all locked into place, I can move on to my little tiny florals that I just didn't want to throw away. We have a lot of stuff like this in our craft rooms, do we not? Where we're like, I don't want to throw that away, I'll use it for something. And then it just goes into a tub and we never use it. So whenever I'm working on projects, I always like to try to make something like this where I have just these little pieces. Instead of just sticking in a box, let me just do one more project. It'll take me like 10 minutes to make it and I have something beautiful. I can give it away as a gift. I can use it for decor in my home, whatever I would like. Now I binded all of those florals together with some twine, cut off the extra, and then to really finish the look, I love these garden tags. If you've been here for a while, you know that I was obsessed with these for years. I am going to add one of those on because it gives it that apothecary look, which is so pretty. And that's it. Super easy, made from scraps, cost me basically nothing. For this project, we're going to be taking 2 of these wood fence posts and I'm going to be cutting them in half. Now I made sure I accounted for the very top part where it's arched. I went ahead and also cut that part off because I just wanted these to be flat pieces on both ends. I love these because these are still affordable pieces at your home improvement store. These have not gone up in price like most of the wood has. So I picked up 2 of these to make this sign. Now I'm going to go ahead and bring them together, all 4, to create a really adorable farm barn door wreath hanger. You can also use this for so many other things, to put hooks to hang jackets on, all kinds of fun projects for this. So you can see that I use some painter sticks. I used wood glue and hot glue, and then I stapled them into place on the back side. And then on the front side, this is how we're going to get that barn door look. I went ahead and created a middle piece that had angle cuts, and then the 2 long pieces that go across the width of the board. Now to give it that farmhouse look, I'm going to nail in 3 of the nail heads here on this side where the middle meets up to the ends, and then 2 on the other sides. Now I'm going to take some white paint and I'm going to just do a really rough job painting this. I'm not trying to get every single thing covered to give it that farmhouse look. And then I'm going to go ahead and take a white bee and wipe back off the paint off of the nail heads, leaving it looking a little bit rough with a little bit of paint on the nails where it looks like it's been outside and weathered for a long time. Then I did a little bit of light distressing and added a metal handle to the very top. I'll link these handles down below. I picked them up on Amazon. I love these and I'm actually going to be using them on another project soon here on my channel. And then very last, I drilled another hole for my screw to hang up a wreath. I am taking all of these different florals, a mixture of past spring florals with some of the newest florals, to really cut down on the price and get that fall look. Now this color theme is so fun. I wanted it to have that fall color where things are starting to become a little bit lighter from the cold weather outside. It's got that frosty look where it still is also bringing in those beautiful oranges and very soft pinks. Now I have a couple different ways I like to do my wreaths. First, on this wreath in particular, I'm using a zip tie and I'm bringing together 3 of this peonies from the Dollar Tree, and I'm clustering them in 5 clusters, and then I'm coming back in and I'm also going to zip tie on bundles of these peach carnations, as well as this newer sprig from the Dollar Tree that has these beautiful peachy and white leaves. It's got that frosted look with the little pumpkins. Then I'm going to start to fill in these pink roses, because again, this is that muted tone that you start to see towards the end of fall, where everything is really starting to just get cold and icy outside. I thought these all came together so beautifully. Now I made sure to still add in some really bright, pretty orange, and then this boxwood as well from the Dollar Tree. I was so impressed that the Dollar Tree had all of these new floral picks this year. Another thing I added in were these white berries. These are all year long. You can find these at the Dollar Tree. And then some of this fall grass. I thought that this pop of green and yellow in here was perfect for this wreath, and it really got that look I was going for. And then the last thing I added in were some of these, I don't think they're black eyed Susans, but they're little sunflowers that are white, and it has the really dark brown center of it. I loved that little pop in there. Now this completes the look. What do you think? This project is so incredibly easy. All crafter levels are welcomed to this one. Now, what I like to do when I get books home from the Dollar Tree, I just take them and dunk them in water, and then I set them outside on a table in my backyard and I let them air dry, and that's how I get that vintage look to my papers. I'm going to take some paper from a book, 2 pieces of cardstock, and some twine and a Sharpie marker, and we're going to make the most beautiful banner that says fall across it. I'm trimming off around the edges of the text paper from the book, and then I'm going to create a dovetail cut at the bottom. I do not recommend you using a book that's a favorite of yours. This is just a $1.25 book from the Dollar Tree that I'm never going to read. It's kind of funny. My son loves to read the text on these books to see what the book is about. Whenever I make these text crafts with book papers, he cracks me up. He's like, "Mom, do you know what they say in this book? They're talking about aliens and you're writing fall on it." Anyway, he always makes me laugh. I'm like, "Well, you're not supposed to read the text, just look at the word fall." So I guess you could be kind of picky about what it says on each piece of paper. I don't really do that. I just know that I'm going to make a cute banner using the text paper. Let me know, would you be the kind of person who would read the text that is actually on a book piece of paper? I'm curious. Now, I'm using my Sharpie marker and I'm just freehanding this. I'm creating the word fall, F-A-L-L, but you can put whatever you want. You can make it where it says autumn. You can make it where it says harvest. It is so endless, and it's pretty inexpensive to create this thing. All it is really just a book, some scrap things. You probably even have old books at home that you're not even going to use anymore. You're going to donate them. Dunk it in some water and you'll have some beautiful vintage paper. So once I got through all of my letters, and I'm just freehanding them, I'm kind of looking at my phone over to the side at an old English font to kind of help me along as I'm going. After I'm done doing all of the letter work, I'm now going to take those papers, use my adhesive, glue them onto the cardstock to really strengthen the pieces of paper. Once I had all of them glued down, I'm now going to take my scissors and cut them out along the edge where you don't see the cardstock, but you only see the text paper from the book. Cut them all out, and then we're going to move on to bringing it together on the twine. I'm going to use my crocodile, but if you have a hole punch, that works too. Whatever you have on hand to create little holes on the opposite sides at the top of that letter card that we just made. And then this is how I am going to thread them on. So I have a long piece of twine, and I'm going to do a double knot on each whole side of these lettered cards. I'm just going to do one knot, pull it nice and tight, but not too much, it's going to rip through the paper. A double knot, and then I have a long tail to be able to hang it up from the fall side of the banner. I'm going to run the twine along the back side of the card, come out through the front side, just like you see here. I'm going to pull it tight, not too much again to rip the paper, and then I'm going to tie one knot, and then I'm going to tie the second knot. This is going to keep the banner pieces from sliding all over the place and moving and shifting on you. I just like when banners stay in place and they look how you want them to look, but you don't have to do the double knot. You can just zigzag that twine on in there and it'll hold them too. You can even put a little piece of tape like on the back of it to keep the twine from letting the card move around. You can do that too and skip the knots. It's whatever is easiest for you. But you can see here I'm now tying on the A, and I'm having some spacing in there because I want it to not be too close. You could also rip some fabric strips and hang that or like tie that in between each letter card. That could be really pretty too. If you have some fabric on hand, you want to dress up the fall banner even more. It's whatever you want to do with your banner, and you just have fun being creative in your craft room. It's what I always like to encourage. You take the ideas that I'm sharing and then run with them for your own home and decorate with them however you want, at the colors you want, at the texture you want, at the distressing that you want, whatever it is. Now you can see here that I'm done tying all of the knots and it's all come together, and I'm just going to do some distressing with my black ink pad. I'm just going to go all along the edges to really define those papers. And I realized that if I go very, very gentle, grazing over the top of the papers, I can bring in some ink onto the texture of that paper having been wet. I think it's so pretty adding in that extra paper, that extra texture of the ink. I'm very gently just grazing over the top, and it's picking up all of those imperfections of the paper being wet in the past. I found this ring sitting around from a leftover mason jar, and I thought it would be so cute to turn this ring into a sunflower. And then I dreamed up an even further project. Why don't I turn it into something I can hang on a doorknob, because I love dressing up doorknobs in my home. I'm going to take that ring, cut out some of this brown and white polka dot fabric. I cut it down to size, and then I add hot glue inside the rim of the mason jar lid. And I'm going to tap that fabric down along the rim. Beware on this part, the rim from the metal of the mason jar can warm up. So just move quickly. The hot glue on the metal warms up the metal. So I'm just keeping my fingers away where the hot glue is going to be at. And I'm just taking my time. Now once that was all glued into place, I flipped it over. I cut off all that extra fabric in there that I didn't need. And I'm going to use my Crop-A-Dile to punch 2 holes so I can add in wire. This wire is going to allow it to hang up on a doorknob or a hook in your home or a dresser drawer with a cute knob on it. Friends, I love little details like this because I think, and I've said this a million times, this makes a house a home. When you have little personality things like this scattered throughout your home, and you can do it to whatever style you want. It can be more modern, it could be more boho, it could be more farmhouse. Whatever your style is, it's so cute. Now you can see here I just twisted that ribbon around, creating my little handle for the sunflower. And now I took that ring from the mason jar, I laid it on top of fabric, and I traced the circle, the size of the ring. I cut out a piece of fabric, and where the circle is, I'm going to fold it once and fold it twice so the center of the circle is at that point. It's kind of like making a snowflake, except for we're going to make petals for a sunflower. Now you cut out your petals however you want. You can make them smooth and loopy. You can make them where they have a peak on it like I'm doing. You can make them long and pointy. The point is that you can make your fabric flower into whatever kind of fabric flower you would like. Isn't this so cute and so fun? And it's so versatile. And if you go to craft shows, these could be very cute, where you can make a whole bunch of them that are super affordable and sell them for a decent price at your craft fairs that you go to. And they're just so cute when you hang them up on a darling knob or a hook somewhere in your home. Love these. I love this project. I really hope you try this one. Now I'm going to double up my flowers, so I'm going to do one smaller and one bigger of that same snowflake process, folding it 2 times, cutting out the petals. And then where that ring was, where we put the pencil line from tracing the mason jar lid, we're going to put hot glue and then put the lid right on that hot glue. Now before the glue dries, flip it over and pinch the fabric quickly before it dries, so that way it has little petal peaks where it's gathered together a little bit, and it adds some more dimension and personality to the petals. I did it not just to the first one, but also to the second one, you'll see here in a second. But I'm just adding some glue onto the second one, centering the smaller flower right onto the larger flower, and then move quickly, pinch those peaks so that you create that texture on the petal. And it does move quickly, so make sure when you're pinching, you don't take too long in between pinching this, because hot glue can dry, depending on the temperature in your craft room, pretty quickly. Now once I had all of my peaks and I liked the texture of the petals and the flower, and by the way, you can put as many layers of this as you want, and you can even add on some faux flowers from the Dollar Tree. We could leave it like that, or we could take it a step further, which is what I'm going to do. I have one of these garden tags. You know I love these. If you've been here, you know I love these little garden tags. I'm going to glue one of those on because I think it has a very farmhouse feel to it. I'm going to add on some of these foam leaves from a previous pick that I had just sitting here on my craft table. Friends, I find all of these little doodads sitting around my craft room, and why not turn them into something and make a beautiful project with it? Then I'm going to add a gingham green and white bow. This gingham ribbon, I usually get it around Christmas time from the Dollar Tree. I'm going to tie a bow and glue that right onto that wooden tag. And then how can I help myself? I love buttons. I love buttons. I'm going to add on 2 green buttons, one layered on top of the other. And I'm going to put that right in the center of the bow. This was the easiest project, made from a whole bunch of scraps, some fabric that I had on hand, things that were just sitting around that I could make into something beautiful. And it seriously took me, this project, probably about 7 minutes. Now I wanted to clean up around the rim so you don't see any glue in there. And I thought, you know what would be really pretty? If I put some more glue and then sprinkled some orange glitter, because you know how sunflowers have that depth of the orange in there? Friends, this turned out so cute adding the glitter. If you're not a glitter person, just skip that part. You can maybe put some twine or another ribbon rolled around in there. It's up to you. But I loved the added glitter. I just made sure once it was dry, I got off all the excess so it didn't get all over my floor. And it had the most beautiful presence on a knob. I hope you try this one too. For these supplies, we're going to be using 2 of these orange wired baskets I found painted orange in the home section, this wood log from outside that I have from my yard, 4 zip ties, and then any fabric of your liking. We're also going to be using a 2-inch wood round. You can see it right there on my table. And we're going to drill into this wood log. Now I'm keeping my hand far back. I'm keeping my drill leaning onto the table so I don't have any loss of control and I'm taking my time just drilling through the wood log. I'm now going to take my Crop-A-Dile, punch a simple hole in it, and then I'm going to add some hot glue and work quickly because I don't want my glue to dry. I added the hot glue. I'm bringing on the wood log. I put in a screw into that hole, into the wood round, and then I'm going to screw it all together, locking it in place. Now you don't want it to be too tight where the wire is not going to be between the log and the wood round. We're locking it into place so that it has a nice hold. I can't stand making projects where they just fall apart, like there's a top or stem, someone picks it up and then poop, it just comes right off. I don't like making projects like that. I like making things that are going to last, which is why I decided to bring out my drill for this project. Now I'm going to really lock it in, that it's screwed in place, and I'm going to add on lots of hot glue over the wire onto the wood round. This is going to make sure this stem never falls off on you. We like to make quality projects here in my studio because I just am a believer when you make it long term, then it just looks high end. Now, while the glue is hot, I'm adding moss all over the top of it, a whole bunch, and I pull away the excess I don't want. Then we're going to flip it over and add glue onto the wood round, and then I'm going to tap the fabric in at the top so it helps conceal that wood round on the bottom side so you don't see it. And then I'm going to add my fabric in, and you can add in whatever fabric you want. I do regret not adding a little bit more white burlap into the pumpkin. I wish I had filled it a little bit more, but there's a whole bunch of holes in it, so if you decide to add more fabric, you can always go back in and add more. But this is so fun because you can pick whatever fabric you want inside the pumpkin, and it really dresses up this wire basket. Now I'm going to take 4 zip ties, and on the counter opposites, 4 sides, I'm going to zip it together, and then I want to conceal those zip ties. I don't want to see them, and I also didn't want to get out my paint this day. You could definitely paint them, but I've decided I really like the idea of taking twine, wrapping it around. You could also use yarn. You could use yarn, you could use a berry garland, you could use a whole bunch of different things. I'm going to wrap my twine all around the zip tie to conceal it. Once I've gone around enough times and I like the way that it looks, I can't see that black zip tie, I'm going to go ahead and tie a double knot. I want to leave the tails on that double knot, the leftover of the twine, just a little bit long to make a thicker bow with thicker stems. And then I'm going to do a darling bow, and I'm going to glue that right on. And I'm doing this to all 4 sides of these zip ties, and the finished look, it's such a large decor piece, and it's so easy to make and so darling for the fall season. Heading over into the kitchen section and the home decor section areas of the Dollar Tree, we're going to use a pizza pan and one of these wall tiles. Now, I know these wall tiles are so popular with a lot of crafters. That's because they're just so beautiful. It really gives you that farmhouse look. So go ahead and remove them from the package, take off the stickers, and then take it outside. I used spray paint. I used my rustic orange on this project because I want to make sure that the paint adheres. I know some people like using chalk paint. I'm a big fan of spray paint because it goes much quicker. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to trace my pan onto the tile so I can get the sizing. I'm going to pull off that back part because once you cut the edges it comes apart for the tile. And I'm going to just keep playing with it until I get the size just right to fit in the middle of the pan. You can see that I got really close from tracing around the sides, but I needed to take it down just a little bit more in the side. And how I do this, I just smush it down and make little dots, kind of a connect the dot for my scissor to follow to be able to get that perfect round shape. Once I've got that all cut out and it's ready to be put down inside, I'm going to use 2 different adhesives so it really sticks in there because we're still dealing with metal. So I'm going to use E6000 and some hot glue and pop that right into the pan. Now we could leave it like this. It's really pretty, but I wanted to have more of a rustic fall farmhouse feel. So I'm going to come in with a cream, not a stark white, a cream paint, and I'm going to dry brush to bring forward that pattern on these tiles. This is just such a fun technique and I never get sick of doing it. How about all of you? Do you all use these tiles as much as I love them and want to use them? Once I was all done, I had this leftover handle for a paint stirrer stick that I used from a long time ago. You can use anything for the stem. You can use a popsicle stick or a craft stick, whatever you want to call those, or some rope, all sorts of different things. But I'm going to use this leftover handle. I painted it and sanded down the edges a little bit on it. And now I'm going to add some E6000 and some hot glue. And I'm going to make sure it has a nice spot on the back. I'm making the handle a little bit deeper down into the pan so it's got more of an area for a surface to grab onto that painter's handle. I get asked all the time to slow down the process whenever I make bows. So I'm going to do it here to show how I make a bow out of rope. I am simply going to create 2 figure 8s, never cutting my rope. So I made the first loop, the second loop, and I'm going to come back around and make the 3rd loop, swing it back around, make the 4th loop, and then I let the tail come out. The trick with rope is that it wants to naturally twist. So make sure when it's wanting to kind of pull and twist the wrong way, you just have to gently just twist the rope back the opposite way and it'll help it lay flat. Now I don't actually tie a knot with the rope. I'm going to come back in because I'm going to double up my bows for this project. I'm using the same ticking stripe ribbon that I'm planning on using for my second bow, and I'm going to use that to wrap around the rope. Now you can see here, I'm adjusting it. I'm making sure it's still laying flat before I lock everything into place. And I'm just taking my time to make sure it looks right and it's going to sit right. And I could speed this part up, but again, I wanted to show everybody how I do this because I get a lot of questions about this particular bow whenever you see me do it here on my channel. So once I've gone around a couple of times with that ticking stripe ribbon, I'm going to take my hot glue and glue that down into place. This is going to really help lock it all into place without things moving and shifting. So now I've got this really pretty rope bow that has such a beautiful rustic fall look to it. And I'm going to glue that right onto my pan, right at the top where that handle area is. And it just looks so pretty, doesn't it? I think that this bow is so fun to make. And it is a little bulky and a little more masculine, but I love that look where it's got a little bit of a rustic masculine look, but yet feminine. I think that is the sweet cherry on top of that cupcake when you can accomplish that on fall farmhouse DIY decor. Now I'm going to come in with my ticking stripe bow. Like I said, this is the more feminine bow that I'm adding on top of that more rustic manly bow. Is that even a thing? We're making it for this pumpkin. It's going to be a thing for this pumpkin. And now I'm going to add on a brown button. I just think that this buttons it all up nicely. That was a cheesy joke. On the back side, I'm going to add on a couple of leaves. I like to lock it down with a piece of ribbon so it doesn't pop off and it has a nice finished look. This project cost me $15 to make. Now I will say you could definitely make it much cheaper if you already have a whole bunch of fabric on hand. I ended up doing about 1/4 of a yard to 1/2 of a yard depending on which fabric I was using of all of these different fabrics. And we are going to be making a beautiful rag banner with these bright, wonderful fall colors. So I'm going to take a twine that I want to be a certain length. You can make it whatever length you want. And I'm going to add on just 2 loop knots on the ends of this twine. so that we can be able to hang it up and have a nice loop to be able to put that on a hook or a nail, wherever you decide to hang this up in your home. And I'm going to cut off the extra and make sure it's nice and tight. And now I'm going to start taking the fabric and I'm going to rip it. So it's really easy to do this. You're going to find the grain of the fabric, and you'll know right away which way is the grain, because when you try to do this, one way will rip so smoothly and the other way will struggle. Once you've ripped everything up, go ahead and you're just going to loop on those fabrics. So I make it like the shape of a U, put it on the twine, and then I bring the ends through the loop so it's holding onto the twine. And then I just continue to do that. I create a pattern of how I want them to look, and I just stick to that order, going through all of the fabrics and repeating that pattern over and over again from one side over to the other end. And when you're done, this statement banner is the most beautiful banner and can be hung up all over your home. I just love it so much, and I hope you will give it a try. I found these apples on Amazon. I'll link them down below in my description box, but today I'm going to be using these smaller ones, this bucket, this foam square, some boxwood, and some shish kebab sticks. Start by taking your foam square and cutting it down in half, and then I'm going to just shove that down in there and glue it into place with some E6000 and hot glue. And then the other half of that foam square, I'm going to cut it down a little bit in size, and then I'm going to start to shape and round the top so that we can turn this little bucket into an apple bush. I thought this would be so cute for the fall. So go ahead and add some more hot glue and E6000 so it really bonds on there well. And then I'm going to start working on my apples. Go ahead and take your shish kebab sticks, poke them into the apple, and try not to let them go flying off like that one just did. And then you're going to go and glue in the stick at the bottom of the apple so it doesn't pop off over time. And then you're going to just sporadically place them all over this foam square until you get them to the liking that you see and desire. Now I'm going to take some hot glue and I'm going to add in some of this moss down inside the bucket at the base. I thought that this would look really cute, as if you'd see it in your own garden. And now I'm going to take my boxwood and I'm going to cut them down so that I can place them into all of these holes that I pushed into my foam square. This is going to allow you to be able to get all of those boxwoods in there and glue them into place. And the more sprigs of this boxwood that you add, the more it really starts to transform into this little apple bush, which I think is so fun, and it's really easy to create this look. Cost me hardly anything and I love it. I saw this darling bucket and I wanted to turn it into a pumpkin. I thought the shape of it was just so cute and friendly. So what I did, I took the handle off, I popped off the nails that were in it, took it outside and spray painted it this great orange color. I'm going to link my spray paints down below so you can find them in your local home improvement stores. But I loved this color. I felt like it was the perfect orange. Now I'm going to glue on this little branch at the top, and I'm going to decorate it with a couple of leaves. Nothing too crazy, but you really could just embellish this as much as you would like. I like more of a simplistic look on a lot of my DIYs, but I do want to have a little personality. So I'm going to put in a little sprig of boxwood, tuck that in there, and then a bow. You never could go wrong with a bow. I put bows on a lot of things just because I think that they're just so cute, and they really just, I don't know, I think they're really pretty when you add on a bow, especially if it has a cute bow like this where it's got this beautiful stripe. Now I'm letting the tails be really long, and I'm doing a dovetail snip at the bottom where I pinch it in half and cut up at a triangle. And the transformation is so simple and just such an impact on a table. Our starting thing we need in hand are a tower of tumbling blocks. These blocks I get from the Dollar Tree, and you get so many to work with in the pack. Now they're supposed to be the Jenga version of the game, but a smaller condensed size, which is so great for DIY crafts. Now I'm taking the first row of 3, zigzagging some glue across it so every block has some glue. And then I'm going to continue the pattern that they have inside the packaging. 3 going one way, 3 going the other way, zigzagging the rows back and forth with the stack of 3 clustered together. I'm going to continue doing this layer by layer, adding in my glue. And the first tower we're making is going to have 10 rows. The second tower we're making is going to have 14 rows. All of this comes from the one pack. Super simple to do this part. And to make sure they're straight, I keep putting it on the side of the table, kind of rolling it around and putting my hands on the sides to straighten it out as much as possible. But it's okay if it's not perfectly straight, because that gives it that darling farmhouse charm to it. Now I'm going to add on quite a bit of red paint. I really want the paint to go between all of the rows of these blocks, so you don't see that wood in between, and it looks like one unit. You could also paint these green if you have green apples in your home or you prefer green apples. You can do all sorts of things, make them into pumpkins. I love these tumbling blocks. Now I'm taking this large craft stick. I'm going to do a water stain on it, and I just have a jar with water, some brown paint, a little bit of black paint. I mix it all together and it absorbs into these craft sticks beautifully. Once it was dried, I'm going to go ahead and paint on the word apples with a small tip brush. And I always like to just put my paint into the cap of my paint bottle. And I use that instead of getting out a whole nother plate to make another mess. And I'm going to make these 25 cents. I remember when I used to make everything 5 cents and 10 cents. Not anymore. Things are so much more expensive now. So I was like, I'll make these 25 cents. And realistically, it should have been like 50 cents or 75 cents. But anyway, once my paint on that was done, I'm now going to do a little bit of distressing. I'm sanding, and I'm coming in with a black ink pad that's kind of dried out. I don't want it to be too saturated on this ink pad. And I'm just kind of toughing it up, adding some texture, some depth. This is really going to give it that farmhouse charm to it for the fall season. Now I'm taking some twine. Once that was all dry, I'm going to wrap it around 2 or 3 times, and then I'm going to tie it nice and tight. I'm going to take my apple sign, glue that right on, and you don't have to do the apple sign, but I just think it adds so much whimsy to it for the fall season. If the whimsy thing is not your thing, you can leave that part off. I'm using my miter shears to cut this twig down to size, and I'm adding a really nice dollop of glue on the top of these apples because I want to roll the sides of this twig in that glue so it's going up the sides, and it really helps it lock it on a lot better. So I'm rolling it around for both of them, and while the glue is still hot and easy to stick something to, I'm going to add on some moss. I'm going to compress it into the glue without burning my finger, and I add quite a bit. And once it's dry, I pull away the extra I don't want. Now I'm adding on a raffia bow right into the center of the tall apple. And I'm going to add some buttons as well because I think this is just so whimsical and charming. I'm going to put that right in the middle of that raffia bow. And then to complete the look of this, I decided I didn't want to do a bow and a button on the smaller apple, but I did want to still put something. So I'm going to add on a leaf, and I also added a leaf to the taller apple too. You'll see it in the finished look, but that's it. So cute, so fun to make. All right, friends, I found this darling wood sign. It was the $3 plus section. I spray painted orange and I took off the twine on the back. I'm taking a piece of scrapbook paper and I'm going to rip along the sides to create a box that's a rectangle size. And then I'm going to create some pencil lines where I know I want to cut it down because I don't want to cover up all of that plank woodwork there. So I'm just trimming it with my paper trimmer, getting all of those in place, and then I'm going to glue it all down. Now, once I had everything glued down, I really wanted to give it a shabby chic look. So I'm going to get out my sanding block and I'm going to really rough up the sides. But first, I'm just going to brayer that paper into place. And once it looked good, you can see here with my sandpaper, your sanding block, whatever you want to use, go ahead and rough up the sides to show some of that wood. Now, I get these hinges from Amazon. I'll link them down below. I love these hinges for my shabby chic projects. I just think they're so pretty and they have a beautiful vintage look. I'm going to secure them with a little bit of hot glue and then some push pins. And I'm just going to hammer those into place so that they look like grommets. Now, I'm going to do another ripped paper, but this one I crinkled up into a square shape. And I'm just going to rough it up a little bit, and now we're going to embellish this thing like crazy because I want to go for a shabby chic vintage fall look for this decor piece. I've got this leaf, this burlap leaf. I ripped off the wire, put some ink on it. I'm adding in some more leaves, and I'm just really just playing with it, adding in texture, adding in fall. I love that about the shabby chic style because you really can just layer and layer and layer, and it looks so beautiful the more you add on. I'm now adding on a white sunflower, and I still wanted to play with it a little bit more. I thought I would pop in a mini pumpkin as well as a pine cone. I'm just adding in the appropriate glue needed without having it be messy, popping them all in place, adding in some of this darling beaded wire. And then I'm going to add on some of these Dollar Tree stickers. Now up at the top, because we're turning this into a pumpkin, I'm taking one of these thicker craft sticks. And I did not want to get out paint this day because it just would have been, more work. Sometimes I just want to get through projects and have fun doing them without bringing out paint. So I'm going to just use my ink to tap along that. And then I took a wipey and I smudged all the ink together and it gave it this really nice stained look to it. So that's a little technique try. If you don't want to get out paint, you can use ink pads as well. I'm going to add on a bow, glue that all in place, and we have a beautiful finished pumpkin to decorate with. All three of these sized pumpkins are from the Dollar Tree. We're going to take these 3 pumpkins, some fabric, and a craft dowel stick, and we're going to turn it into something super high-end, high quality, and beautiful. And stores like Kirkland's and even Hobby Lobby, they charge so much for these. These are just some random pumpkins from the Dollar Tree and some fabric that I had on hand and a craft stick. I measured it by bringing up one of the corners onto the pumpkin because I want to make sure that fabric is going to be able to reach all the way around the sides of the pumpkin. And I'm going to cut up both sides so we can have a nice square. Now I believe it was probably about 13 by 13 for this pumpkin, maybe 14 by 14. I always like to with my fabric just so I don't have to cut another piece. I like to be a little generous. So I'm going to pull up one side, I'm going to pull up the other side, add some hot glue, and I'm using a popsicle stick just because this is a thinner fabric and I don't want to burn my finger. I'm going to press down so it's nice and snug, and I'm going to just keep pulling that fabric up on all the sides one by one so it's nice and tight. When I get to those extra pieces that are kind of poking off and not pulled tight, I just pleat the fabric. I tuck it in on the sides, keep pulling it and tugging it until I get it as smooth as I possibly can get it. You can see here I'm just working on this last little part where I've pulled it nice and tight. Now that that's done, you're going to need to cut a hole at the bottom of that pumpkin and at the top of the pumpkin. Where there's hot glue, it's going to be a little bit harder to cut that hole. It's not really that difficult. I'm just saying it's a little bit tougher. But you can see here that the dowel stick is going to go into the larger bottom pumpkin. We're going to add glue so it's all stuck together. And then we're going to add on this moss. You don't have to do the moss. I personally love moss. I know you've probably seen me use it a lot. If you've been watching for a while, especially in the fall time and Christmas time, I love using this moss. I added some moss, and then on the stick itself, I'm going to add some glue because I really want this to be quality. You know what I'm saying? I don't want it to fall apart at all. So I'm going to add some glue. I'm going to add some more moss. And then after that, I'm going to stack on my last pumpkin. And this turns into such a high quality, all supplies from the Dollar Tree except for that fabric. I had that on hand from, I think, Joann's. And you can get that fabric, I think, at Hobby Lobby too. But it's such a high quality piece and it's so beautiful. You could put it on any table in your home and it is such a showstopper. I hope you give this one a try because it's really fun to make. We are going to be using the largest wreath form size that we can find, and I believe it's a 16 or 18 inch from the Dollar Tree, and a whole bunch of different florals. Now, almost every single thing came from the Dollar Tree except for this yellow flower, this little tiny wispy yellow flower. Everything else came from the Dollar Tree. So I'm going to start by popping off all of these whimsy flowers, these yellow ones, because I like to have something light and airy on the outer and inner part of my ring, and I'm going to show you what I mean. I start by first layering on something very dainty and flowy on the outside, and I forgot to mention I did wrap around a ribbon. I just coiled it all around and glued it into place. Once I have that whimsy wispy flower on the outside, I'm now going to come in with a very creamy carnation, and again, this is from the Dollar Tree, these creamy carnations. I'm just going to glue those sporadically around. I love that they had that burgundy color inside, so I added some of those. Then I'm going to come in with this burlap orange flower. I thought that this was just so beautiful, and it added in that beautiful fall orangey color. Now I'm adding in some burlap hydrangea. I thought that this was really beautiful, and you can see at this point that it's really starting to come to life, and you could technically stop at these colors, but I'm going to continue to take it a little bit further because I love playing with colors and I love trying to get that look in my house. So once I've got those hydrangeas in there, I'm now going to come in with my leaves. These leaves, I loved the color of them. I loved that it had a yellow undertone to them. It looked very much so like a leaf you would see at the fall time. So I'm going to fill in some of those areas. I think the thing with wreaths, for me personally in particular, I like to make sure that the color is well balanced like you would see in a garden. I want everything to look natural and beautiful as much as possible. Now this is where the surprise color is going to come in. And it's going to match that burgundy in those flowers we put on earlier. I'm going to add on 3 little clusters, and each one has 3 flowers within those clusters of this red peony flower. And now I'm going to add on the white sunflowers. There's a large and a small one that they have at the Dollar Tree, and it really just starts to bring everything to life. Now make sure you always remove all of your hot glue gun strings because that is a thing. It makes it look like it was homemade. When you remove them, it makes it look more high-end. Now I'm going to come in with some pine cones and some little grains. I think that these are like wheat sticks. I'm not sure. Again, the Dollar Tree. And then the last flower I'm going to be adding on is this leaf that comes off of the pick that has pumpkins. You can see some of the pumpkins are in there too, and this leaf. So I'm just going to tuck all of that down in there and really just make sure that each thing has its own shiny moment. And at the very last finishing touch, I'm going to add on a beautiful bow off to the side that won't compete with the colors, and I love how it turned out. When I go to my thrift stores, I run into a lot of these wood box signs as well as these little wooden boxes. I find tons of them all the time, and I think, I wonder if people knew that you could transform this into something really cool by just adding a couple of supplies to it. Now here on YouTube, you see a lot of people making tiered trays, and sometimes when you use the Dollar Tree supplies, they can get a little bit pricey. And I just wanted to give you another option to show you that you can use these type of things, think out of the box, and turn them into the coolest tray ever. So I'm going to just remove all of the stuff that was all over them, the hooks to hang it up on the back of the white frame, the ribbon and the bells on the box. I'm going to patch those holes, and now I'm going to take this leftover stair spindle that I cut down from a previous project a couple days ago in another video, but I'm going to just cut it down. I'm going to use 4 small balls and 1 larger ball, 1 long craft stick that's a little bit thick, not too thick, and 4 shish kebab sticks. Now I'm going to go ahead and take my drill, and right at the corners where they meet up on the sides of my boxed artwork, I'm going to drill 4 holes in those corners, and then I'm also going to drill a hole right in the center of that artwork. Now I'm going to take those shish kebab sticks and those 4 balls, and I'm going to put hot glue down inside of them, add a stick to them, and make sure that the glue is not popping out over, because we want to be able to lay this as flat as we can onto that art canvas. Then I'm going to cut them down, and the reason why we're doing this with these shish kebab sticks is it's going to allow the ball to really bond up into the actual artwork, instead of just having it glued the ball to the bottom of the box or the artwork and then it's going to pop off over time. This is really going to allow it to have something to hold on to, and it'll be really sturdy and built well. Then I drilled a couple of holes to allow the wood not to crack, and now I'm just going to come in with my screw. You can tell right here I was trying to get it to stand just right so I could drill it in, so I was struggling there just a little bit, but I eventually got it to go. I added in some glue where I needed it and then drilled that together. Then up at the top, I'm drilling a bigger hole, and sometimes I don't have the exact size drill bit size that I need, so sometimes I just kind of slowly go around a little bit in a circular motion and it gets a bigger hole that I need, so that way I can be able to fit this dowel down in there. I'm sure some people are going to tell me that's probably not the best move, but it is what I do in my craft room. If I'm being real, I am a little rogue and a little wild when it comes to my crafting. I guess it's just because I use my drill a lot and I feel really comfortable with it. So please don't do anything you don't feel comfortable with. So you can see here that I cut down that wood stick down to size. I'm going to put that piece in there. Then I'm going to add on some more wood glue and hot glue for a long-term, short-term hold. Once I've got all of my glue on, I then can take my little wooden box that I also drilled a hole in, and I'm going to just simply slide that right on, and it's going to lock into place and have a really nice good hold on it. Now, because you can see that popping up, I'm now going to take the other part and bring that right on, and this makes it look like the wood is going all the way through, and it just gives a beautiful finish. Now up at the top, we need something to be pretty to finish the top of that bar that's holding it all together, or the pole. So I'm going to take that larger ball, and I pick up these wooden balls from Hobby Lobby, but you can basically get them from any craft store. And then I'm going to just glue that right down in there into place, and it really finishes the top nicely.
Then to finish it off, I took it outside and spray painted it this beautiful green color, and boy, did it transform these items.
This next project is so ridiculously easy, and it is so beautiful, especially when you put more than one out on a table, a bookshelf. Oh my word, it looks so beautiful and high end. We're going to start with one of these tall cylinder glasses from the Dollar Tree, and we're going to turn it into a very elevated hurricane glass. Grab one of these candle stem glass holders, add on E6000 and hot glue for a long-term and short-term hold. Make sure it's right in the center. So I actually like to stand up whenever I do this part, to stand over it to make sure it's really centered. And then I'm going to just flip it over. That hot glue is going to dry first, and it's going to let the E6000 lock it into place because it binds the glass together for a long-term hold. Now I'm going to take a bag from the Dollar Tree. I'm going to cut it down to the sizing I need. And then I'm going to use some washi tape to go around it because we're going to take this outside and spray paint the bottom of this hurricane glass we just designed. This is so high-end, I can't even tell you, friends. Pottery Barn and Ballard Home sell stuff like this all the time. It's so ridiculous how much they charge for these. I think it's usually like $50 for stuff like this, like depending on the size. This size was probably more like $35. And so far we've made it for $1.50, no, $2.50. We've made it for $2.50. So now I'm going to come in with a grass skirt raffia piece. I always like buying it as a grass skirt during the summertime because it makes raffia so easy to work with versus buying it in the big bag and it's all crazy. I'm just going to wrap that around, and we're going to give it a beautiful farmhouse country fall look. Now we're going to go ahead and take some popcorn kernels. I put those down in there first, then I insert the candle, make sure it's straight, and add a little bit more kernels without the candle slipping around. Go ahead and move around the seeds in there, and it looks so beautiful on a shelf. You've got to give this one a try.